Good evening. This is the November 26, 2019 Planning Board meeting, being broadcast by Area 58 Community TV. If it could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a few A&Rs, first thing on our agenda tonight. The first A&R is Federal Road, map 131, lots 1-2A and 1-2B and 1-2C, 80 Makepeace. And this is for discussion and possible vote. Good evening. Jim, do you have anything to say about this before we continue, or?
Just that myself and Bob Francis have met with the applicant a couple of times, and Bob and I reviewed again this morning, so everything, meets the requirements for the A&R plan.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, it's not for the purpose of a buildable lot.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm Bill Madden from GAF Engineering here on behalf of the 80 Makepeace Company. We're proposing two Form A lots, each one with frontage on Federal Road. They're narrow band lots across the north and the west side of the property. The purpose of those is to establish a permanent buffer zone between the neighboring lots and a temporary 75-foot wide zone in the event that a cranberry bog project were to take place, or a cranberry-related project were to take place on the remaining portion of the land. That 75-foot band would be used for excavation of sand along the bog edges for long-term maintenance of the proposed acreage in the event that it goes forward.
Any questions by any planning board members?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Bill. You have on here that shows highlighted in green two corridors on the front or on the back part of the lot. They're identified as map 131 lot 1-2A, and the other one's map 131 1-2B. And I'm referencing these.
Yes.
I don't understand why they're different lots.
The intent was to create two separate lots, two individual lots. The one that's directly against the property line, that would be the permanent buffer between adjacent land and in lot 1-2B. The second lot, 1-2A, if there were a cranberry use proposed on 1-2C, that would be potentially used for sand removal. So it's an interim type of buffer zone lot, let's call it.
And what kind of is that just for roadways?
No, that would be just for essentially sloping and removal of sand for maintenance purposes on the bog. Those two dotted lines that you see on the plan, those are actually the side yard setback lines. So it lends the appearance that it might be a dashed line for an existing conditions roadway you might see on a subdivision plan, but that's not what the intent is on this plan. It's to signify the side yard setbacks.
Okay. So you're establishing those two lots with lot 1-2C?
Yes,
So there's actually 3 lots being just chunked out of this one big piece?
that's correct.
I got it.
Any other questions by planning board members?
Is all this land just wooded right now?
It's wooded and contains some wetlands as well, but yes, it's totally undeveloped for the most part.
Map 131, Lot 1 also?
There's activities going on that particular lot. I believe it's an earth removal associated with a solar project, something along those lines.
Okay, but around it you think a
That's,
bog would be created? The new lot that you're creating?
that's one of the options that we're currently evaluating.
Okay.
But this, but this does meet all the zoning requirements, as you said, you've already looked at this.
Right,
down there.
yeah. Bob Francis, the building commissioner, reviewed it, and he was satisfied,
Yeah.
that, requirements, except for putting a house on it.
All right. I mean, as long as it meets all the zoning requirements, it's an A and R. Generally, I don't take questions about this. This is an A and R, but if you want to give us your name and address, if you want to say something real quickly.
Liz Taylor, 31 Russell True Farm. If you were to give the, those side lots, does that take away a butter's rights to screening of the solar projects? If you're creating a buffer zone, does that become the abutting property that, to the solar projects?
I don't know, we'd have to take a look at this. I mean, right now, we're just approving an A and R plan. I don't know if you want to answer that, or if this really pertains to.
Yeah, we're not entertaining a solar project on this site. It might be, I would have to take a closer look at the regulations, just to, see if that was the case. But anyone proposing a solar project, if they didn't satisfy the neighbors, even though, there's a buffer, I think the board would take in the neighbors' concerns, if there was a visual impact.
See, these are Form A plans, and a Form A plan means that it fulfills all the requirements, and it has legal frontage, legal lot size, and there's really nothing that the planning board can do to not accept these plans, because they are according to the bylaws, and they have frontage off a road. So no matter what the purpose is later down the line, I mean, these has to be approved by the planning board anyway. So we just have to take these things one thing at a time, one project at a time. But we don't know of any solar array that's gonna be on here at this time. Any other questions by planning board members? Seeing none,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to endorse the Form A plan for 80 Makepeace as presented, endorsed.
so we have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. The next,
You want to give a minute so we just get some signatures,
okay, yes,
Mr. Chair?
sure. I have a copy, is that, that's gonna stay with us? Does it have to be signed too?
time.
Okay, thank you.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.
Good Thanksgiving, Bill, nice to see you.
All right, next on the agenda is a Form A, A&R, 191 Meadow Street. It's map 81, lot 5, JLK Realty Trust, and this is for a discussion and possible vote.
Good evening. For the record, my name is David Madigan from Madigan Land Surveying. So what we have here is we have an existing lot, and we're simply putting some interior lot lines here to divide it into 2 lots. Currently, there's a home, 191, that's going to be raised along with the garage, and we're basically creating the other lot that right now does not have a house on it. It meets the frontage requirements in the RA zone, meets the areas, the front yard setbacks. It's on a public way, and it has vital access to the lot.
And you've gone over this, Jim?
Yeah, so Bob Francis, Building Commissioner, I reviewed this today, and everything meets the zoning requirements.
Okay. Any question by planning board members?
You plan on building a house on each lot?
I believe the owner does, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can you explain to me a little bit of that little divot in
Ye-
between the lots towards the back?
Yeah, the reason we did that along with the engineers is it was to fit the wells in way back there, and it's a very tight lot, and the septics will be up front, and to get the separation and to do everything, so it's gonna meet the building requirements, the engineer designed it that way. So it's a little different looking back there, but that's what works.
I'm just wondering how that's gonna be defined after the properties are built from Lot 2, just assuming that that parcel of property that Lot 1 has is gonna, he'd take that, use that, with intent to use
Well,
that jog.
if I can, there'll be 2 wells right there, right next to each other. And that line that's 40 feet long will basically be a property line between the 2 wells. And I mean, if one of the owners wanted to have it staked out, they could. But there'll be 2 wells pretty close. And the primary reason is that dips down in there so that this well could get far enough away from the cranberry bogs. If it was a straight line there, it wouldn't quite make it. So engineering-wise, that's why that's like that.
And I know it's just an A&R, but the proposed well on Lot 2 would be located where? In conjunction?
Just on the left-hand side of that 40-foot strip, because they both have got to get 100 feet away from the front where the septic systems are going to be.
Yep.
So the 2 wells will virtually be next to each other. I believe they have to be 10 feet off the property line.
Well, the Form As meet the requirements, Mr. Chair, it's just, that part of it just bothers me, but the Form As meet the requirements. I can't worry about what you might do later on, that's your end.
Yeah.
And the building commissioner, so.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to endorse the Form A for 191 Meadow Street as presented.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Are those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And we have more players to sign.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And this one will get signed too, Jim? Yeah. We're gonna have.
I'll need at least 4 paper copies.
Mr. Addison?
M-A-D-D-I-G-A-N.
Madigan,
Yep.
got it. Thank you.
You may want to consider some kind of staking on those four corners where that section is.
Yep.
Only between the two, if there becomes a
I
second
think it will get staked out, because same guy owns both, and before he sells it, he's gonna make sure.
Yeah, I know it's costly to put the concrete benchmarks in, but
Yep.
at least some
Yep.
true stakings at those 4 points.
Let's see. Will signed. What was the other one?
Can we give Kelly some paper to sign so she doesn't feel left out?
Took it from-
Post-it note or something?
Yeah, here. Here you go, you can sign this.
It's gonna be worth money.
Which one are you using?
Sign that one, yeah.
Scribbles.
Sign this one.
Signing our lives away.
All right, the next is 366 Tremont Street, map 126, lot 6-0, Chrissy Kendrick.
Right, so that was an applicant who was trying to get on for this meeting. They were unable to meet the deadline, so they're gonna request for the next meeting,
Okay,
summertime.
So do I make a motion to continue that? We don't have to, we're just not even
No.
hearing it right
Right.
now,
not
right?
for Form A, no. So we'll continue down to the next, and that is a site plan approval extension request. And this is for 276 Federal Road, 196 Tremont Street, and 0 Hammond Street. Zach Farkas, Borrego Solar.
Good evening, Zach Farkas, Borrego Solar. A couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago, I sent Jim an email with a few attached letters. Perhaps they've made it to each of the board members. Ultimately, I'm asking, as described by Mr. Mackey, for an extension to the site plan review approval for our 3 projects that were approved by this board. Imagine that, back in December of last year, and then February of last year as well. Time flies a little bit. So per section 3170, as it's written in my letter of the bylaws, site plan review approval is in effect for 1 year. Generally, during an approval, we ask to make it 2 years to match up with the special permit. We neglected to do that a year ago, so that's why we're here in front of you. Site plan review may be extended for good cause upon a request by the applicant. So I'm here making that request on behalf of the 3 projects. As you recall, there was a 4th project off Federal Road. That project has already substantially commenced construction, so we're clear on that one. The other 3 will be starting, we'll call it when the weather breaks in the spring, late spring, early summer. So everything's moving well in the projects, just simply a matter of calendar dates. Since the approval, kind of 2 material, I won't say changes, but developments. Pilot agreements have been signed with the town, so all the tax obligations for the projects are set up and fully understood by both parties for 20 years. And if you recall, 2 of these sites had tree fund payments associated to them. We made those payments last week to get them into the calendar year for the town. So there's about the $30,000 round number is available for the town as you guys start your plantings in the spring for some of the work that's going to be done around town. That's it. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Zach, for that update. Any questions by any of the planning board members? Good, Jen?
I doubt you'll give me time to read all that. You guys know how I feel about reading stuff before I vote on it. No chance to let me read this?
What do you have? How long is it?
I just got all this right now, so.
Oh, you wanna, well, I thought you meant read out loud. You
Yeah.
just wanna take a look at that? Yeah, I mean, if you wanna quickly look at it, that's fine, yeah.
I like to read before I
I mean,
vote.
they're just
It-
extending
Right,
their time. It was a one-year period.
right.
They haven't been able to complete the project,
Mhm.
to start the project, so they just want some additional.
I understand, and
If-
it all sounds good, I just like to
Sure,
read
if,
first.
go ahead, take a minute and look at it.
I just had a question for the applicant.
Of course.
Chair. You also attach Appendix A, rationale for extension, where you talk about the ASO study, or for everyone out there, affected system operator study. Is that still part of the rationale for your request?
Yeah, generally, I was between including it or not, and there isn't a clear definition of what good cause is in the bylaw, so I just thought, I'd provide a little bit of insight to why we haven't started. These projects take a long time. A year is probably not enough time anyways for most projects. In this case, we're in the middle of a transmission study, finishing up a transmission study, I should say. So just giving you guys a little bit, at least one concrete example in case you guys wanted some formal good cause, I guess. But the good cause is we're working very hard on these projects to get them across the finish line from a financing standpoint, and that financing, when that's in place, the next thing that happens is final construction design. We submit to the building department for our building and electrical permits and start construction. And obviously, even though we've had a very nice November so far, it's not a great time to start major construction on a project like this. So generally, we'll take our time through the winter and get all those permits in line in the spring, and then, as I said, wait for some good weather to break to start the construction process in the late spring, early summer. Construction for these projects takes 4, 5, 6 months or so, so we'll look to have everything wrapped up, physically constructed by this time next year. And then we'll continue to push the utility to get us turned on and operating. The hope is to start operating in Q1 of 2021.
How many projects have you brought before the board now? Do you remember?
A fair amount of them. The first one wasn't great, but since that first one, I think we've done a nice job finding good sites to develop in this town and some of the neighboring towns. So quite a few. It's probably we're getting close to double digits now, I'd say.
And so how many have been completed?
I think it's close to 10.
Just in Carver?
Yeah, that Borrego's done, and that Borrego, if you include these 4, I'd say we're getting pretty close to 10.
Okay, so then you've actually just completed 6, so you still got.
Yeah, oh yeah, excuse me,
You're
yeah.
gonna work on these later. That's why you
Yeah.
asked for the extension.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to know how long these things took.
Longer than they should. Longer than they should, but I think that's true for almost every real estate development. If you ask commercial developers, residential developers, solar developers, when we draw it up, it always feels quick and easy, but
Yeah.
months turn into years very quickly.
Zach, can I ask, the duration and scope of the ASO study was unanticipated and unprecedented in Massachusetts. Can you explain that and what it means in relation to the Interconnection Services Agreement, the ISA?
Sure.
What's unprecedented about it, and is it this project, or are they doing it with all projects?
The latter. Over the last decade or so, solar developers in Massachusetts have been dealing directly with the utilities, the 3 major utilities, WMECO, NSTAR, National Grid, and generally all the studies happened at that level. Above them is ISO New England, which kind of oversees how these utilities interact at the state level, but also, as the name implies, at the regional level, New England region. And my personal opinion is forever solar was just, oh, those guys are cute, trying to do their little renewable energy projects. And there's been so much momentum over the last decade that ISO New England has kind of hitting pause, and they're rechecking everything to make sure the grid, the infrastructure, the utility, and the transmission side especially can handle all this solar that's gone in. The unprecedented adjective that I use there is really to describe the fact that in the past 8 months or so is the first time we solar developers have ever learned who the ISO New England is. And they're just getting involved. They're kind of checking the work of the utilities. So that's what they're doing here. There's nothing specific about this project. There was just a massive area study, what they call affected system operator study, out in central Massachusetts, where they put about 350 plus megawatts on hold for almost a year. And then they went through their studies, and at the end they said, oh, okay, everything's all set, go forward. So they're doing a smaller version of that in southeast Massachusetts right now.
Thank you for the explanation. Is that the same reason for all three?
Yeah, these projects are clustered so tightly together within the Makepeace Central Core, 4 projects in Carver, 4 in Wareham, all within about a mile radius, that they're all kind of affecting the same feeder that runs to the same substation.
Oh, okay, so your appendix A is
They're all the
with
same.
all of them? Okay.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for allowing me time to read.
Of course. All right, so where were we?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the extension for the following sites, 276 Federal Furnace Road, 196 Tremont Street, and 0 Hammond Street for Borrego Solar Projects.
Is that 276 Federal Road or 276 Federal Furnace Road?
The first one.
Federal Road?
Yes, sir.
Federal Road, okay. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the extension. We have a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Good to see you.
Yes.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Not going anywhere yet. I'll say thank you.
Bring pie.
All right, next, we have a public hearing continued, and we have 2 of those. And the first one is on the application of Borrego Solar Systems, Inc., requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to section 3100, 3580, 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw. And this one's located at 19 Ward Street, which is Assessors Map 120, Lot 6 and 6-1 in Carver, Mass, to allow the construction of a 2.5 megawatt DC ground-mounted solar energy storage facility in accordance with the bylaw in a residential agricultural district. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Dean Smith from Borrego Solar, and Zach Farkas, our project developer again on this project. We walked the site on Monday morning of this week with several members from the board and Mr. Walsh, the town planner, to review how it is situated regarding the adjacent properties. In addition to appearing here before the planning board, we also have a notice of intent application that's moving forward with the Conservation Commission. So the northern bog area that we're developing was excavated out to create a new bog. It was left that way for a number of years. There's no outlet from that area. So there are some areas of that are isolated lands subject to flooding, and we're working with the Conservation Commission to mitigate or impacts to those isolated wetlands in that area. We reviewed the screening options and what things look like from the adjacent properties when we walked on Monday. This is just a continuation of the existing system that we have out there at 19C Ward Street. So it's taking advantage of some of the reduced setbacks that are in your new bylaws. I can go back through things again for the board. I think we discussed it pretty thoroughly last time. We're here to answer any questions that the board has remaining. Hear again from the members of the public and answer any questions that are there to answer.
Okay, thank you. Jim, do we have a sign-in sheet for circulating, just in case. Probably should know who's here tonight. And we did go for a site walk, and I think we had 3 members, including myself. And, you know, this project is next to an existing project, and it's sort of isolated out there, although there are a few houses that may have a glimpse of this. Is there, I just want to ask, is there anybody, any abutter to this particular project out in the audience? Has anybody come for the, this is the 19 Ward Street, 19C Ward Street?
He was here at the last meeting. One of the abutters was here at the last meeting. I don't think he was able to make it today.
Okay. I just wanted to know if there was any abutters or anybody that lived around that particular area. Okay. Are there any questions or comments by any of the planning board members?
Mr. Chair, to you and the other members that went, I just got back from a 2-week vacation. I apologize to the applicant, I wasn't able to make the site visit, but I will ask for my colleagues' input on, was there any impacts to the neighbors, site views, or anything that seemed to be of any concern? Looking for any type of screening. I understand that according to some of the memos and the waivers, they're looking to utilize the new bylaw. So my biggest concern is site.
Now, has that changed? I know we discussed in the field that the new setbacks were used at the beginning when you started the design.
Yes.
And things have changed.
Correct, yeah, when
You could
the,
explain that to the members that were.
sure, the original project was when your bylaw required a 200-foot setback. So that's the area from the property line to the existing system.
Yep.
So the new bylaw provisions allow for reduced setbacks under a number of conditions, so that area between the 200-foot setback line and the current setback line is now available to develop with solar. The other system is in operation, so this one will still have to be a separate system and have its own interconnection up near Ward Street, but your new bylaw does allow additional area for us to develop there.
And I think that, through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's important that the public understands that's why we brought that to town meeting, to have that under common ownership of land, and that we reduce that just to save some of that, so I thought that was important. Other than that, any sight lines from any of the abutters or anything that would seem to be a concern for you guys that went out?
I don't know, Jen, what do you have to say?
When I went there, I expected 5 Ward Street to be the only house in consideration, but I was surprised. There's actually a house when we were driving out to the site. There's a house kind of in the wide open, and I believe you said
It's
Johnson
actually
family owns it?
Lawson's, Mr. and Mrs. Lawson own that house that's closest there. They actually previously owned a parcel that's been combined with our project property to get out to Ward Street too. So there was a parcel there that was also owned by them that was purchased by our property owner. They're another bog operator that sits back in that area. So they're on the opposite side of their bogs from our system. We did discuss the visibility from 5 Ward Street as well, but there is some long distance visibility of the system from there. We had made a revised submittal based on comments from Fuss and O'Neill. That's probably in your packages, hopefully addressing their last comments. But we didn't address any screening issues up there at the north end. But we're here to discuss it with the board and see what your pleasure is as far as that goes. If you feel like there is screening needed up there, we can work on those options. It's still a very long distance, even to that close house. It's probably over 500 feet to that house. So there's a long distance. It's just open area because of all of the cranberry bogs that are down there. It's very flat.
Okay, there was that wide open house, and then Canterbury Path, I believe it was, Will, too. We could see a lot of houses there, and I was unfamiliar with that area, so I drove it after, and you could see through the trees to there. So I was wondering, had any landscaping or screening be thought for that neighborhood and back, even if it was
Canterbury's
a distance?
here.
No, should be, yeah, it's this circle here.
Yeah, there were a number of houses that we could see.
There's also
Go ahead.
Canterbury Path and Canterbury Lane. So I took a ride down there as well, and the one that's I got my two mixed up, I think it was Path, was this one that's off of, the street right off of Meadow.
South Meadow, yes.
Oh,
There's
South
a
Meadow.
circle there.
Right, the first street, then if you go down to the left, take another left. There was like two houses, just when I drove by, it was like a wide open shot. To look
Okay.
at the project and where it was gonna come a little bit closer. Still, it's, like you said, a couple hundred feet, but I just didn't know
Yeah,
if
it's-
anyone had talked and maybe just put some screening up there just to.
I mean, screening from a planting standpoint is gonna be tough, but similar to what we did on the Tremont Street project, where we had, the whole expanse of bogs that we were looking across, we could use a solid fence with privacy slats, maybe go 8 feet instead of 7 feet like we normally do. Planting out there is challenging, number one, because of space, but number two, because of what, it's just challenging to get anything to live out there when it gets cold and the winds really start blowing. There's a reason nothing grows on those roads, so, yeah, we can absolutely, on the west side, add a solid fence and make it a larger than normal fence to help with some of the sightlines.
Okay, this one isn't a dual-use system, it's just gonna be low to the.
It
to
is,
the bog,
yes.
so,
Mhm.
and, okay, and you're gonna have to fence it anyway, right?
It's basically,
Yes.
you could think of it as a project expansion of the existing project.
Mhm.
Basically, we had that 200-foot crescent moon as it looks around the existing project. Now that the bylaw's been changed, we're building in that section. So it's gonna look and feel and smell the exact same as the existing project.
Okay, and there is a fence around that first
Yeah, the
project.
projects
There
that
is.
Dean mentioned will be electrically and mechanically separate. These projects are just, when they're financed and constructed and operated, they happen in a moment in time. So the existing project is an SREC 2 project, an old program, and this will be a smart program project. So they need to be separate, they need to operate separately.
Okay. So if it's fenced, and we do something with the fencing, I think that would satisfy everybody.
I think as the neighborhood is protected,
Mm.
I think that's important. And I'm still concerned about that one wide open house, you said the Lawsons.
Yes.
We don't have anything kind of signed from them saying they're okay with it. I know you say you are, but they're in the wide open. So I would be concerned with them, but if a fence works for the neighborhood, that's reassuring.
I think it would actually provide adequate screening from the north end too, even though they're a little closer and have a much more open view of things. If we go with an 8-foot fence, I think it's gonna entirely screen their visual from that perspective.
Okay.
So, is there any other development of these plans that you have to do, or?
Well, we haven't received a response. We had just sent the revised plans last week.
Okay.
Because we wanted to include at least a first view for the planning board of what we were proposing for a potential mitigation option for the Conservation Commission.
Mhm.
We didn't want that to be missing from your plan set. So I would want to hear back definitely from Andy Glines at Fuss and O'Neill. There still is some discussion about the setback that we would need to apply.
Okay.
As what? Excuse me, as well. Our property owner been negotiating with the adjacent property owner about coming to a joint agreement that might have some influence over what that setback is along the western property line. as I pointed out to you when we were walking, the property lines, the actual parcel lines down there don't necessarily make a lot of sense on the ground because they don't follow the actual uses. They actually cut a portion of that northern bog off, and it's actually on Mr. Cobb's property rather than on the Cedar Meadows cranberry property. So he's been operating in that whole area over time, but it's actually on the adjacent property. So that's also one of the options that's been discussed and possibly considered, is making some kind of lot line adjustments down there too that could affect it.
Okay. So this will have to go to the next meeting anyway. Okay. So you'd be looking for a continuance.
So, Mr. Chair, through you to the
Sure.
applicant, I'd like to suggest that you reach out to the two areas for screening and in most particular, the Lawson's house, and speak to them and come to some type of understanding of if they feel like they're impacted, if they want substantial amount of screening or not screening, and get that back to us prior to our next meeting, so that way we know that that conversation happened, and because the expansion of what you're proposing in this application encroaches towards them more than what was already there. So I just want to have that communication with them, and I know that, Zach, your reputation, you do that anyway, so.
Very good.
Folks on Canterbury too.
Yeah, Canterbury, I know that they'll look at how they're gonna do that screening. Myself, I'm more concerned with the view from the Lawsons, because it's much more closer.
Right, much more.
Well, the Lawsons were much closer than the other homes.
Yeah.
And they had a wide open view.
Right,
The other homes, I did drive through those streets, and especially now with the leaves down, you could see, bits and pieces of the cranberry bogs up there. But it certainly was, it was probably 50 feet to 100 feet of trees, in the ones that I've seen anyway. But I would think that an 8-foot fence would work really well there, along the whole. So, since you gotta put a fence up anyway, if you put it up a couple feet more, and if you have it some sort of a solid fence, if you could just, figure out what you might wanna put out there, and, at our next meeting, you could just tell us what would work. And, I think that would provide, good screening that way. Any other questions by, any board members? Just seeing none, open this up to the public. Is there anyone out there that has any comments? Okay, seeing none. I don't know if we want to close the public hearing right now?
no.
Probably not, okay.
I make a motion to continue the application for Borrego Solar for 19C Ward Street to, what's our next meeting? December 10th, at 7 o'clock.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right,
And I'll say happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
thank you. All right, next is the application, and this is a public hearing continuance on the application of Clean Energy Company. Joe Shanahan is requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 2230, 3100, 3580, and 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw. It's located at 0 Snappet Road, which is Assessors Map 34, Lot 2 and 5, and Map 33, Lot 9-C, in Carver, Mass, to allow the construction of a 2.0 megawatt dual-use large ground mounted solar photovoltaic project proposed to be constructed and operated on and in conjunction with the existing active cranberry bogs in a residential agricultural district.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Joe Shanahan, Vice President of Real Estate and Permitting for Clean Energy Co. With me is our consulting engineer, Rich Trebezinski from Atlantic Design Engineers. As the board is aware, this public hearing opened 2 weeks ago and was continued to tonight. I expect that it will be continued again after tonight. Just to give you an update, since last we met, on November 13th, we closed the public hearing in front of the Conservation Commission, and an order of conditions was voted to issue at that time. So that is out of the way. Yesterday morning at 10 a.m., we walked the site with members of the planning board and Mr. Walsh. I want to thank those of you who took the time out of your day to do that. Mr. Walsh and I get paid to do it, but you folks don't, so we appreciate you volunteering to come out. I think the board got a better understanding of some of the issues with regard to the project as a result of that site walk. The other thing that's transpired since that time is a letter has issued from the fire department. I don't know whether you've seen it yet, Mr. Walsh. It's dated yesterday. We got it about 4:15 this afternoon. So on the whole, it's pretty vanilla, nothing surprising, nothing dramatic. The one matter that did come up, which we will have to address, and I'll mention it publicly, it indicates all access roads shall be at least 12 feet wide, constructed of an all-weather surface, and cleared of obstructions on both sides by at least 2 feet. A 16-foot vertical clearance should be maintained for large vehicle access. Roadways shall accommodate turning movements for the fire department. Numerous roads on the existing site do not appear to meet these standards. The last comment is accurate. I think what's important, and I've already talked to Rich about this, is we really need to do a fire department plan showing ingress and egress. A number of those dikes, if you will, that are used for vehicular traffic that you saw yesterday would not be utilized by the fire department, but they don't meet these standards. So I think we have to demonstrate to them what ingress and egress will be and that we can fulfill these requirements. So that's where we are. We're still in the process of addressing the matters that came out of the Fuss and O'Neill letter. I expect to have that material back to the board and to them for review, certainly a week before your next meeting, so that they can digest it and comment back to you. So that's pretty much an update. I'm happy to address any questions the board may have or the public, or any other comments that might come forth.
All right, thank you. And we did go out for a walk, and it was Jen, myself, and Jim, and the four of us went out and we walked around the site. And the site's, the biggest concern to me was the Perry property. I mean, we did walk the site. There's 2 areas of solar panels there. And then we went up to the Perry's property, and they were kind enough to have us walk up on their deck in the rear of their house. And some of the members that didn't go on the site walk, let me just give you a little of what I saw. Is we were standing on the rear deck of their main house and looking out to where the solar project is going to be. They have there's a second house to the left, if you're looking out towards the Cranberry Bog. And going to be the solar project to the right and the solar project to the left. On the right-hand side, from about 12 o'clock, if we can do that, to about 3 o'clock, is they do have trees that cover the cranberry bogs right now. Although a lot of them are maple trees or oak trees, and the leaves are falling, and you could see the cranberry bog through the trees. They're mixed with pines and other things there. But you could get glimpses of the cranberry bog around. From about 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I guess. Yeah, no, 9 o'clock. It's all open. The house sits up on a hill, and by eye, I'd say it's about the bottom of the foundation is maybe 20 feet above the bog road at the bottom of the hill. So as you're looking from 12 o'clock to 9 o'clock, the backyard is the hill, and then it goes down, and goes down about 15, 20 feet, and it matches the cart path that's used for the bog work. That's all wide open, so they would have a view of the solar panels on the left-hand side, the whole system on the left-hand side, pretty much. So, we were presented a plan of the plantings by Mr. Shanahan at the end of our meeting. And then we did go and discuss this with the Perrys afterwards. And we did see the size of the trees that were on that plan. I think they were about 20 feet high. But I think in order for this project to work, if the bylaw says that they have to have 100% coverage of the solar field. And what I would like to see, since other things have to be developed out here anyway for the next meeting, would be a plan showing the elevation of their back deck, their lawn, the slope down to the bog road. And if it could be an elevation view showing their house and showing these things, and then showing the solar field and then the line of sight. Because I just want to make sure that as you're standing in the backyard, if there are plantings, and if the plantings have to be improved on the right-hand side, and we do have to do the left-hand side as we're looking at the bog. I just want to make sure that you're not going to see that solar field from the standing on their rear deck, which is approximately about the rear of their lawn, of the height of the rear lawn.
If I might expand upon that just a bit, Mr. Chairman. First is those of you who did the site walk yesterday are aware there are actually two properties that have visibility to the site, one of which is on High Street. Kelly McDonough, the owner of that property, came out and joined us on the walk. I gave her my card. She will be in touch with me, and we will go forward and I'm sure work something out. I want to put on the public record once again that over the last couple of weeks I have attempted to establish a dialogue with the Perrys who own this property that you're so concerned about. As yet, they haven't agreed to discuss the matter with me, which makes things very difficult. So I would, through the chair, ask the Perrys to reach out to me if this is a matter of such concern that we might approach it. The other technical aspect I want to point out is while the house is, the foundation, if you will, is 20 feet above the bog and the bog road, that 15-foot hill belongs to our landlord. The Perrys and others have trimmed that, but it isn't their property. Their property line goes to the, what I would call the lawn area to the rear. So if we do plantings on the landowner's property, it'll be significantly higher than the cranberry bog at that location and have a greater impact. So we're committed to do everything we can to screen in accordance with your bylaw. But once again, I can't make progress if I can't have a dialogue.
Sure, I
Thank you.
understand. And I think the Perrys, you know, listening to them, I think they wanted the planning board to go out there, take a look, and then maybe, from what I understood for us, maybe to come up with some suggestions, you know, working with you and working with them, you know, whether this, you know, can work or not. So,
Oh, it will work, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
so what I was saying, and I spoke with some of the planning board members that were there. We talked, and this doesn't have to be the way it goes, but it could even be slightly bermed on the left-hand side. Just a suggestion to raise the tree height on that left-hand side where they're gonna have a long view over the solar. It's just a suggestion. So,
We've done that in the past, Mr. Chair.
yeah. And so I would like to see some sort of rendering, some sort of plan, like an elevation plan.
That's reasonable.
And
Line of sight.
just to make sure
Sure.
that this is gonna work for them, or what size of tree will be needed out there, or what would have to be bermed in order to make this work.
Okay.
And Jim also spoke with me, and he had a suggestion about meeting with all these parties here. So if you could say what you'd like to
Right,
see
so I think
happen.
first the Perrys want to meet and discuss what the regulations are. Then once they understand what that means, then we could possibly set up a meeting with Mr. Shanahan.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I'll certainly get to you.
I knew you would, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments, or any other ideas by planning board members?
I have a
But there
comment.
was some other neighbors too, I don't know if you want to speak about that. We did find the lady walking down the trail that was a
Mhm.
neighbor, that did have a view. Mr. Shanahan spoke about her, and he gave her a card and information to contact so that you could work out some sort of screening for her house. And she was very pleased with that.
Separate comment, when we were down on the bog looking around, I brought up the most recent bylaw about screening and the needing a butters agreement in writing to reduce the setbacks or the screening requirements. And Mr. Shanahan, you quickly rebuked that that bylaw is unenforceable, and that if the project was shut down, you could take it to the state and it would get
I never
overturned.
mentioned the state, Ms.
Sir, you
Bogart.
did.
Go
You
ahead.
did, and it came across as threatening in nature, and in my opinion, it was very disrespectful to the jurisdiction of this board and the will of town meeting passing that bylaw.
May I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
And I would indicate to you, I never suggested I would take it anywhere else. You might have inferred that. I may have implied it, but I never said it. It's not my style. What I did indicate when you said your bylaw requires 100% screening for all residential properties unless you have a written statement excusing you from that bylaw. And I said, 100% screening requirement in a local bylaw is contra to the state Dover Amendment as a prohibition of solar facilities. So I did use the word state, but I mentioned the state Dover Amendment. If there is a dispute about, I'd ask you, what does 100% screening mean? You people have to review it and enforce it. What's 100% screening mean?
100% to me is objective, not subjective. It's not visible.
It's invisible to all residential properties?
Not visible.
Not
Not-
visible.
Invisible, isn't that the same as not visible?
I'm not Merriam-Webster. You asked my thought. My point was that the comment, the response came across as very disrespectful.
My apologies, that wasn't the intent. It was intended to be informative, not disrespectful.
All right, any other questions or comments by planning board
I
members?
do. If it's all right with the Perrys, I really did want to be there, but I'm just so far behind in work that I couldn't. I don't know if it's all right to make something, a point to meet with them and to see this for myself as well, because I did want to. So I don't want you to think that it wasn't important to me. It's incredibly important to me, and I would like to see it. I just could not get away.
Can I respond?
Sure.
So I knew some of you and yourself, even at the meetings, weren't gonna be there. I would like to see everybody, to be honest with you, because this does affect, I think I have some valid points that will help you plan, and some questions. You brought it to us before, then no one's come back, and really, this is the first time people have given you responses or came down to deal with this. I have multiple issues with the screening, and even how maybe even you guys apply this stuff. My understanding is these bylaws are not debatable.
One second, and I don't
Go ahead.
mean to disrespect you in any means. we haven't opened to public comment. It was just a request from a planning board member to meet up with him. I do want to give him and anybody else here
Okay.
100% of their due right to give us that information, because it's,
Yeah.
we just have a process that we have to go by. and I
The issue
apologize.
is, you are absolutely welcome.
Thank you.
As long as, and I've said the same thing to everybody, as long as we know you're coming, I don't care who shows up.
Thank you.
Is there a way that Kevin can get in touch with you people? I mean, see, it was Kevin, I don't know if Will be able to,
Kelly.
I mean,
or if you just see them wandering around your
my
property,
phone
would that
number's
be okay?
on the sheets, work at Perry's Automotive, Halifax, easy to get there, and we can go from there.
Thank you.
I could be there too as well.
Yeah,
I
that,
live right down
yeah.
the street.
okay, yeah, that'd be fine. And I don't know, see, these two gentlemen here would probably just be able to do it on the weekends. I don't know if you did it on the weekend, yeah, okay.
If it rains, I could put my
No
jacket on.
Patriots game.
You can also get in touch with me. I can give you my telephone number. I can walk you out there and kind of show you where the two areas are. I mean, we spent an hour, probably maybe it was over 2 hours, I think, out there. So if you want to I can give you my number tonight, and you guys have my number, and you can give me a call, and I'll go out there with you.
Thank you.
Because I'd want Jim to come out on a weekend.
Well, I can come out too, you know, for a sidewalk on the weekend, so I'm available.
I didn't want to ask you to do that, but
Right. I'm available.
dedicated Carver public servant. All right. Any other questions or comments by the planning board?
Not at this time. I'm really interested to hear what he has to say and other abutters.
Okay, I just want to ask the question. I know the Perrys. Is there anybody else that is an abutter to this project that is here tonight, other than the Perrys? Okay, just the Perrys, okay. If you want to speak, if you just give us your name and address, and
Want me to come up, sit there, or?
if you could sit right there and talk into the microphone, that way there, all the thousands of people at home can hear you. Huh?
I'll try to be official.
You might even get comfortable there, and we might get you.
better seat. Is there an opening?
Always open.
That should be okay. So my name is Robert Perry, Jr., 5 Snappert Road. And I'd like to address a couple things, hopefully that we're not closing this hearing so that we can continue the debate.
No, I don't think we'll be closing this tonight. We'll continue it, and we did the same as the other meeting. We'll continue the public hearing for public comment at the next.
So I think the first comment that I want to make is the unwillingness to meet. You pulled me out of a planning meeting, or asked to come out, we were at conservation. All these meetings were relevant to what I was doing. I wasn't leaving. He gave me his business card. I believe the second conservation meeting, he gave me his card, asked me to give him a contact and go from there. What I said to him was, I needed to get educated on this process. He sent me a letter stating, basically coming out that I was unwilling to meet with him. Again, I sent an email stating, it's not that I'm unwilling to meet with you guys. It was, I don't know what the rules are. I'm not having a conversation about one thing and then changing the rules. Why get in an argument? Why have a debate when we don't have a guideline? I said this to you, Mr. Chair, and the other people that were on the deck. Quite simply, once we have the rules of engagement, then it's very easy to have a conversation. I'm not avoiding contact. The other comment was that I didn't choose to come down to walk that property. I was giving you your time. I invited the board in conservation here to come up, including him. I said anybody. He chose to walk away also. I assumed,
That was me.
and I assumed that you guys asked, because you said you were going to come up after, to deal with that. So some of this, whatever, I don't want to call it a bad attitude, but whatever the statement sounds like, that I'm unwilling to deal with this.
That's not the fact. I came out of work, was there an hour early, did some stuff at the house, waited for you guys to come up, did it, spent a little bit of time, and this is where I'm at. And I think we're all in agreement there, or at least on the parts that you were there. I don't have the guidelines.
Okay,
And-
you know,
Yeah.
I understand.
So-
and I know that this is an emotional thing for you, I
Yeah.
can imagine. And so we're just here to help and to.
Right, and
You've got guide, and now we've come up with a plan. After we spoke to you, we spoke to Mr. Shanahan, and.
Right,
so
but he
that's
said
what we're
also-
doing tonight.
unwilling to discuss and meet. That's what he said, and that to me implies unwilling. No, I said several times, you people have not given me any information on what the bylaws are. You didn't even know what the bylaws were when you came here. You said, I got elevated, I got dual use, I have everything, we're gonna sit down and do that. I can't be expected to sit down, even with your request, and to do that. So that, I just wanted to address that, because I'm not unwilling to do it. Now, do I want the project going in my backyard? No. Do I want my rights fully enforced? Yes. So that's where we have our battle lines. The other battle line that we discussed a little bit was, you know, and I spoke about it, that this is a financial thing for me also. Tim Pink's looking to make money. These gentlemen are looking to make money. This affects my property value. Anybody that comes out every time, whether they're new, young, whatever, what a gorgeous house, what a gorgeous site. They've acknowledged it's a nice overlooking place. I bought it that way. I built an in-law, split my property, pay extra taxes so that my family could live there. I'm going to be damaged no matter what. It's a matter of to what degree and how quickly and how easily I can be screened. The guidelines for screening is, again, not up for debate. The bylaws say 100% screening. Let's forget the elevation part and everything else. Anybody who is abutted that you can see needs to be screened. None of these projects ever deal with screening until the end, because they don't want to deal with it. If I don't come and deal with it, we don't have it. If you don't mention, hey, I want to see this, are the same rules being applied? We're opening up a new bylaw, setbacks are changed, are we enforcing new screening laws? And are those screening adequate? And again, where it becomes into debate, what's 100%? What's adequate screening? I got 10, 15 feet on a hill with natural trees and everything else. I brought this up to you guys. I can see through that. That's 5 to 6 months out of the year. It's only gonna get elevated, it's only gonna grow, and everybody knows pine trees, when they start to grow, do not have foliage or leafage or whatever the correct word is on the bottom. It's the top half. From my house, from the side, is at least 50, 60 feet of woods on that triangle. I can see the street. There's a gap on the 9 o'clock side, that, as you said, that's significant, at least 10, 15 feet that you can see that's open, that will have clear views. And then the left side of the property, looking onto the bogs, is wide open. I don't know how we're gonna handle all this stuff. I don't particularly think a berm and 20-foot trees is gonna help me with this. I think regardless, there's some damage gonna be done financially. This is gonna be on your end too. You know, they have their legal rights, I have mine. Somewhere in the middle, we'll figure out what the deal is, and I have recourse too, just like they do. So, you know, we need to figure out, and you guys need to figure out what that height is, what the line of sight is, and that's what I asked. We talked about shooting grades, and then coming up with some common sense stuff. This is the first, to my knowledge, dual-use residential plan before you. Am I incorrect?
We have a dual use in South Carver.
With residential restrictions?
It's It's, there weren't any houses, it was mostly commercial.
Right, so this is my point.
This is, well, not only is it a dual use next to a residential area, but you have an elevated house.
Right, so it complicates it
That
more.
makes it very difficult. It makes it more difficult.
Mhm. So you need to, in my book, protect me the best you can. And that includes the financial hit. Just putting up, you could put a 50-foot wall up, that might be worse than putting the solar panel up. There should be some consideration on that end, and I'm asking for that. You know, if this was at your house, you would not want this, sir. Or you would be fighting with it. That house is not in a small residential area. I pay good money for that house. The house is valued no matter what. Location, 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 real estate. I bought it, I paid for it. I appreciate the fact that Tim maintains it. I appreciate the fact that Tim needs to make a living. But, you know, I don't quite understand why they have to drop this in a backyard of 3 or 4, 5, 6 houses when there is plenty of land in Carver for these projects. You know, I have some ideas, even moving that tree line to the backside of that block. Why buffer it right at my house, at my property line? Why not give me visual sight to that? Put the buffer zone up there, get the 100% buffer, a line of sight, screening, whatever I'm saying, and wrap that thing around. Let's find a reasonable solution to this. They don't have to just slam it up against my house because that's what's convenient, so no one else has to worry about it. If they move that to that back road, and I'm mentioning this now because you're dealing with fire and other things, and I think that's a viable case. If a 20-foot tree is going to be put up, and it can be put up at the same distance on his property, so I don't have to deal with erosion, tree loss, or anything else that goes on with it, so be it. He may lose a little bit of cranberries on that backside, all right? So everybody loses a little bit. It may cost them a little bit more money. But why slam this thing right up against my house because they think that's the easiest and best way to go? Why, if at least that would give me some kind of, I don't know, relief with some of the financial burdens. There's no doubt, and I don't think in anybody's mind, if they do this, I lose money. Okay, so you guys, I asked 2 things. Let's get the screening thing figured out, not just for me, for everybody else. So if we have to change things in our bylaw, and I'm getting hosed a little bit, that we can figure it out for the rest of the people. Okay, I've said this before, said that to you guys before. It's not just about me. I don't care if people aren't here. I will go fight for them too. You guys need to enforce the rules, and I think that's fair. I don't think anything that I've just spoken about is being unreasonable. All right, he's proposed 1 set of trees. That's in all the meetings that they've come to. They've done studies, they have done engineering, they have done everything else. All right, it's quite clear what these screening is supposed to be. It's right there in the bylaw. Why is this not on the board presented and go from there? You know why? Because they don't want to spend the money if they don't have to, and you let it go. And this may be a first for you guys, so I'll grant you this, but I was a little stunned that when they presented it, that the other properties are not there. There's more than just a couple houses there. They can see it. It's supposed to be screened 100%, and that's a non-elevated situation. So, and if it applies, I believe it's from the 2nd floor. I know one of the rules from they said the screening was supposed to be 100%, including the 2nd stories for this stuff. And I could be quoting the wrong bylaw because I had 4 of them in there, and again, we don't have it. So that's kind of where we stand. I'll speak for my wife and my father-in-law, who puts a lot of time and effort in this stuff. And, you know, I'm sorry. This all could have been avoided too if they chose to maybe come and present to us way before everybody did this. This is the first time we found out about this was at a conservation meeting, which everybody showed up to, not realizing quite what it was. And they were actually gracious enough to allow us to speak and listen to it. And I'm glad they did, because it brought up some of that stuff. But normally this stuff was all worked out beforehand. They just came down and said, hey, we're putting a solar field up. I mean, that's the truth. And I believe that's the truth for the rest of the abutters. So, I mean, I don't need to take up any more time. I think that's a pretty good general overview of what we're talking about.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Through you to Mr. Perry. Couple things I want to reassure you. Number one, you're a resident in this community. There's no doubt in my mind that yourself and your family participate in our government, participate in town meeting as much as you can. We're all busy. We here work for you. Have no doubt. I've been on this board longer than anybody else in this room. I work for you. You have questions, you come to us at any time. That's why we have a professional planner that you pay for to help guide you and let you understand your concerns. The only thing that I can suggest to you, and I will be as clear as I can that I have been in the 14, 15 years that I've been involved on this board, is that if I don't give you all the proper information, I do not belong to sit here, because I'm not doing my job. And I can speak for all these people that are sitting up here. We are your asset. Don't feel that you're left aside. This is new to you. A lot of it is in this new solar incentive program, and dual use is new to us and new to a lot of people in the community and in the state. We ask the applicant to provide us as much information as possible to us so we can be as clear as we can. But we work for you, and that doesn't change. So please engage us. Please allow us to give you as much information and guidance that we can. And rest assured, as I sit here, in my opinion, today, this application is just starting and it's not approved. It doesn't get approved until this board says it is. So it doesn't come in with a clean slate. None of them do. These people want to come in. Our bog owners are trying to do what they can to survive. The incentive programs are out there to help entice it. That's a wonderful thing. But it has to fit the bylaws that are put in place by the community that voted on them. Myself and Jim Hoffman worked on the initial solar bylaw with other people in this town on a very contentious, short-term 9 months, trying to come up with something so this town was somewhat protected. And we've adapted that. And we've moved different bylaws for similar cases like yourself. And there'll be changes coming up to the bylaw again because of this case and other cases that are coming from us. But I want you to be assured that this board works for you, this town hall works for you, and we're your asset. We're your ally. We are to provide you as much guidance and much information as we can. And if we can't come up with it, Jim can. And if Jim can't, we have Southeastern Regional SERPED Planning Agency that can help us. We have plenty of assets, plus we have the applicant himself. We can ask him, I want to see a tree. He's got to show us that, or else it don't go forward. Your initial statement was that you don't know the steps, you don't know the guidance. You're a citizen of this community. How would you know? I've been here 15 years and I'm still learning. I just want you to be assured that we're here for you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim. Well, no, I just want to say that we're just at the beginnings of this. So there's a procedure that's followed. Generally it goes to conservation, then it comes to us, and there's a procedure. But we're at the beginning of this procedure. And you weren't left out at the beginnings. I mean, we're just at the beginning of this, and we're just looking at the facts. And we're trying to see what can happen out here. So, and I thank you for bringing up all your concerns, because they are things that I've been thinking about since I left your house. So don't think that we're not thinking about these things.
No, I appreciate that. I don't want to think or make it feel like that you guys were left out, just that we weren't aware of what the rules were, and I don't want it to seem like, you know, we're just being jerks.
Well, we're gonna help you.
Oh, no.
We're gonna help you.
We don't-
We'll help you understand the process, which I think is extremely important. I think a lot of it is overwhelming when something gets dumped on your lap, and you don't know what way to turn and who to turn. Do I get an attorney? Do I not get an attorney? What am I doing? Things are spinning way too fast. It's understandable. So
Right.
allow us to help you. And please, I told Jim, I leaned over to him and said, we need to get with you guys. I'll make myself available, you know, in the afternoons after work, so we can work for a living.
Yeah, and I'm self-employed. The nice thing is I'm around. I have flexible hours for the most part, where if I need to step out for an hour and stuff like that, we can do that. I think still the next thing that we got to do is, Mr. Walsh, sit down and talk with you, like we asked, and then from there, we can start to proceed with everybody else.
Yep.
I didn't want to choose to deal with anything else before I was comfortable here.
I think that's a smart move.
Jim and I did go down and see the town clerk, and she told us that the new bylaws for the solar bylaws are all updated and they're on the website.
On the computer now?
Yep.
All right, because we had handwritten ones that we got after the meeting that I was told was the current one, and then we were informed that that website was incorrect.
Yeah, but
Outdated.
she just told us this evening that that's all been updated. The other thing is that Jim can review those with you when you come and meet with him.
Okay.
And if needed, you know, I certainly can be there, or, you know, to go over these things with you too.
I think once we start, if there's questions, write them down, move from there, and then submit it to you guys.
Yep.
Through Jim, I would.
And there's, Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
a reminder, with our Tremont Street project, I can't remember how many months we spent on that, because we did have an issue with the abutter. And I think it was over a course of 4 months that, before we came to a situation where we had a resolution to it. So these things don't necessarily just get jammed in. That particular case, we took our time with it, and we were able to have let's say, happy outcome as a result of it.
There's a lot of stress, you know. Every day before the meeting, you're up thinking about it. I'm not hard time concentrating on work. I do feel comfortable with what some of the stuff moving forward from where I did start a month and a half ago, maybe less, right? Maybe less, regardless. So, you know, I do thank you guys for everything. They are providing it. Seems like, you know, they're here, we're here, no one's missing meetings, so we'll move on.
All right.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
that's
very
it.
much for you and
Yep.
your family being here tonight. You spoke very well.
Thank you.
Understand your concerns. Anyone else want to say anything? I think we should continue this. We won't close the public hearing tonight, obviously. We should continue. Hopefully, we'll get some of those sketches and elevations that I've asked for, on what you propose that you can do for plantings
Sure.
up there. And if you can show us that this will cover the solar area from their house.
No, we appreciate the guidance, Mr. Chairman, and I'll look forward to sitting down with Mr. Perry and Mr. Walsh. And
I mean, I know this is a bit along in your planning. I don't know if anything could be moved around. I mean, this is just a thought. Whereas the screening could be put, I know that there's a bog. If you look in the back of the house, there's a smaller bog that is not gonna contain a solar field on it. And then to the rear of that bog, there are other bogs, and that's where the solar fields are gonna be. I don't know if it's possible to move the solar panels around so that the screening could be put in back of that bog that's gonna be left empty.
No, that, actually, Mr. Chairman, we're totally flexible with this. The planting plan that I presented was only because I knew the planning board was expecting something. It's not even a part of our site plan application at this point. It was something we put together. I think once we are able to have a dialogue, something like that is very feasible. Even as I picture it sitting here, it seems to make some sense. That was just an initial foray to see what the reaction would be, and
Sure, just a talking plan, just something to talk about and to look at.
and as Mr. Walsh said, I'm used to things taking time to get where they need to go, so.
Well, in this particular one, it's not an easy one, and I think that we just want to take this, and I just want to make sure it's right, because everything that Mr.
We'll make it right.
Perry said, I can certainly understand all his concerns.
Of course.
I can understand his concerns.
He will tell you, the first day I walked up on the property with his father-in-law, I said, "You've got a beautiful view." I can't deny that, so.
And not only that, a beautiful house and property.
Of course.
So I guess we got two things we may want to look at. And then I want to say something to the lady on my right here. No, good. It's good. I gotta ask you a question. I gotta ask you a question, that's all. I'm depending on you for some things here. No, I guess the first thing we might have to look at, if it isn't totally crazy, is if we could back that field off from their house and then put screening further away. I don't know if that's a consideration or not, but it's something that I would appreciate if you looked at. And then secondly, if that can't be done, then we'll look at this, a screening plan that will block the solar field. I can understand what Mr. Perry is talking about, when he would like to have that step back.
I understand.
On the other side of the block. And I think that would help considerably, and help his property values considerably. It's just a thought. Now, you young lady. I was gonna say, what other houses needed screening out there?
The woman who came up, who, Kelly Ryan.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I didn't do a thorough drive-by of everything. We did continue down, I believe, Snappet Road, and there were peekaboo views, but the focus here was really their house and the neighbor's house.
Yeah. So there aren't that many houses that really abut this. Is it possible that we could contact those people just to see if they're concerned or not
That's fine.
about this?
The Ragazzinis couldn't come tonight either, they both work. They're next to us.
Are they concerned
Dennis Ragazine?
about their
Yes,
view?
Dennis, yes. Are they what?
Are they concerned about their view?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
What-
with all due respect, whoever these people are, they received legal notice. They haven't appeared at a public hearing. They haven't submitted a written statement. I'm happy to reach out to them and speak to them, but I don't think someone who is not an abutter, who doesn't have a letter of authority, should be allowed in a public session to represent somebody's opinion without them being here.
No, I'm just saying if you could just reach out.
I
and
shall.
Just ask them if, because that has been done by other solar companies that, I'm just saying that that's been done. They may say that they're fine with it, so, but it's just to reassure the board that's happening.
And just a matter, I believe they were here for the original conservation. I believe they did sign in, and he may have spoke, he may not have. I don't know their concerns, I won't speak for that, but
Okay.
they did show up for one of the meetings, because we talked after.
Sure, because they were notified, so they're direct abutters.
Right,
Okay.
yes, and the Ragazines are direct abutters, yes.
Do you know what house number they are?
I don't know what the
Well,
numbers
we have
are.
their name.
When you move up the
That could
street.
be looked up.
There's
Okay.
two houses, they own both.
Okay.
9 and 11.
To that point, I have said in prior meetings about solar projects, and it goes to anything, I don't want to feel that any abutter or resident in general needs to appear to defend their property. That, like Will said, we are elected for the residents. I don't want to put pressure on the Perrys or neighbors or anyone else who may be affected or interested by a project to have to come here to make that case. It's our responsibility to look out for everyone. So just because someone gets a certified letter and doesn't respond, doesn't mean we disregard them. We are here for them. So I don't want pressure. Everybody's saying you need to come to the table and talk. I don't want them to think that they have to come up with some sort of negotiation, and if you don't, sorry, we gave you a chance.
Okay, there aren't that many houses out there. Let me speak to Jim about that and see what we
Because
can do.
I don't want people to
Make
think they
sure
have
that
to
they're notified and-
do something
Or
for
they know what's gonna happen out there, whether they're happy about it or not. I'll make sure, I'll do that. Speak to Jim about it, we'll take a look at the assessors map.
Just because someone doesn't respond doesn't mean they might not care. That's our job.
Sure. All right. So, I think
Just-
we're at the point, yes, Jim?
Just to reiterate on what you were saying, some of the ideas that you're coming up with are excellent, as far as if the project can be pushed back a little bit, screening on all that. Because the majority, I think the Perrys are probably the only one with an elevated view. The others are all relatively ground level, so if we could screen it from the ground level up versus, surround that area type thing. Just thinking of different projects that have happened in the past. And obviously, I think everyone knows my past with solar in this town and why I'm on the board. So, we're always gonna look out for everybody, for the applicant and for the abutters, but to come to a happy medium, if you will. But again, when I went through it, there wasn't a bylaw. Now there is a bylaw, and that's what we're all gonna follow. And we're gonna explain it to the Perrys and the other abutters exactly what it is, so what your rights are under this bylaw that was voted on by the town. The town's voted on it, we're here to enforce it. So I know it's emotional and everything, I'm bringing back a lot of memories right now, seeing you guys going through this. But it's good. I mean, you have to come up and talk about it, and, but like Will said, we're here to enforce that. So, I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, and I know, Jen's concerns, unfortunately, when I think that if people don't come to the meeting, I figure that they're not interested, so, but that's not always the concern. It's not, maybe they can't show up. So, we'll take a look at that as well. So let's,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I'd like to make a motion to continue this hearing to our next meeting, December 10th, at 7 PM, please.
Second that.
so we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too. Mr. Chair, I need...
Yeah, go ahead. I got to, let me see, we have a new public hearing, and I have to dig this out of my packet. Thank you.
This whole spiral thing, I actually have something this time.
Thank you.
No.
You're better. I just did the last page.
Yeah, I know, that's why.
It's okay. Yeah. Oh. Right.
Okay, I'm going to read this public hearing notice for this new hearing tonight. And this is in accordance with the provisions of the Town of Carver zoning bylaw. The Carver Planning Board will hold a public hearing on November 26, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the Carver Town Hall, Meeting Room 1, on the application of Renewable Energy Development Partners LLC requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 2230, 3100, 3580, 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw, Assessors Map 107, lots 1-4, to allow the construction of a large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation located at 0 Pond Street in Carver, Mass. This project consists of a solar energy facility that includes two components, both located on a portion of the plus or minus 560-acre Swan Holt Bog complex owned and operated by 80 Makepeace Company. The two projects components include a plus or minus 3 megawatt agricultural canal, solar canopy, and a plus or minus 1.4 megawatt dual-use ground-mounted array in a residential agricultural area. Any persons interested in wishing to be heard should appear at the time and place designated. A copy of the plan is on file at the Planning Department and may be reviewed during normal business hours. Carver Planning Board, Bruce Mackey, Chair, and this in Carver Reporter, published dates November 8th and November 15th of 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Sarah Stearns with Beals and Thomas, and with me is Hank Grimet and Tom Mellahan of Renewable Energy Development Partners. This is a new project that we haven't spoken about before. I had delivered some reduced size plans to Jill, so I'm not sure if they made it to you, but it's a hefty plan set, and okay. Do you guys have the?
We do not.
Maybe we can just give them a couple.
We have the book, that's about it.
Okay.
Do you want the smaller? Oh, sure.
Please, thank you.
Here,
We can share.
I have another one too, actually. You guys can.
We can share.
Yep.
Me and Jen will share. Thank you, very good share.
We are.
I printed a couple of the key pages, so I'll have them up here as well, but, there are a lot of pages in here, so I just wanted to point that out. The first section, typically as we do, is the base plan, so it's the existing conditions, and then the second half of the set is the topographic plan with the proposed work on top, and they're all labeled pretty clearly, but we'll kind of go through it as we give an overview of the project. But so, as Mr. Chairman said, the owner of this very large lot is 80 Makepeace Company. The address is technically 0 Rear Pond Street, another 0 property, just because there's nothing on it other than cranberry bogs. It is located, to help you orient yourself, north of Pond Street, which is down here, between South Meadow Road over this way and Wenham Road up to the north. Just to help orient yourself, you can see a little bit of the airport over here, the Bow Street neighborhood, golf course, and everyone knows where Patriot Pines is. So we're kind of in that same neighborhood. The red line on this map shows the property line. So as you can see, it's an enormous piece of property, predominantly active cranberry bogs and a massive wetland system also adjacent to that. Access is off of Pond Street, down just off the page, and also off of Wenham Road. If and when we do a site visit, we'll probably meet up off of Wenham Road. There's a pretty robust access there. So the other thing that's shown on this plan, I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but there's a red dashed line just inset off of the property line. That is the 200-foot setback related to the solar bylaw. So Just for starters, this project complies fully with that 200-foot setback in all aspects, and actually in a number of places, it far exceeds that. So though this is a dual-use project, we're not looking for a reduction in the setback for this particular project. All right, I have a lot of notes because there's a lot to say on this. So I also just wanted to note that you can see, just based on the size of the site, there are a large number of abutters to this property. It doesn't mean that they're very close to the project itself, but just the scale of the site creates a lot of abutter notifications. And what we did that was a little bit unusual, I worked with Jill in the planning department to include a smaller version of this with the abutter notification this time, just to give people a better idea when they get that certified letter in the mail, what exactly it relates to. Because some people who had been notified are miles away from where the actual project is. So just so the board knows, I think it was probably effective because there aren't that many people here. But anyway, just wanted to let you know, I think it's a good thing for when you have a project site of, and we have a lot of these types of properties in Carver, just the nature of agriculture. There are some large properties. So anyway, a couple of things housekeeping wise I want to mention before I get into the description of the project. We have been to Conservation Commission. The board had a public hearing. We had a site visit. They issued an order of conditions actually in August. And since then, we've been preparing the plans and the application, and it's been in the process with this board for site plan review special permit. We did just receive a review letter from Fuss and O'Neill. Happy to report they are fairly benign comments, mostly some minor adjustments to plans and the provision of some additional information regarding the arrays themselves. And really the only substantive comment is the recommendation to provide sightlines from some of the abutting neighbors down in the Bow Street area, which we actually brought with us tonight, and we will have with us for when we do a site visit. So I think that will lend a lot of information when we are actually standing out there and can talk about it and look at it from the perspective that we've mapped from the abutting properties as well. I've only spoken with Carver Fire verbally. I haven't received any written comments from them. Jim, I don't know if you've gotten anything yet. Okay. Jesse did take a ride out there, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but we did, have a conversation. It seems that access is not an issue, similarly to some of the other existing cranberry bog projects where there are existing appropriately sized access for their uses. And as we've done with other projects, any new roads would certainly comply with the dimensional requirements and turning radii and that sort of thing for the fire department. So he did indicate that he would be sending comments. I'm sure you'll get them anytime. Okay, so just to kind of give you an overview of what we're talking about, as Mr. Chairman mentioned in the legal ad, this proposal includes two different components. It's one project on one site, but it's comprised of two pieces. What's shown in green is a dual-use ground-mounted array, similar to what we've talked about in the past. However, it is not proposed on one of the cranberry bogs. It's actually proposed in an area that's partially wooded, partially roughed up from use of some of the cranberry operations, getting at some of the material in there. That particular area was earmarked by the landowner for a sand and gravel, or I guess a sand mining area for getting material for use on this property, possibly others for agricultural use. So it kind of made sense to direct the project location to somewhere that they already knew that they were going to be performing some sort of work there. So it's a dual use, but the crop beneath or crops beneath will not be cranberries. So it won't be turned into a bog. It would be similar to what REDP has come before this board with before. There would be a different type of crop. It's all still agricultural land and ag use, but I don't know, have we decided yet, or is it a potential mix of different?
Yeah, it is, Hank, we met with our EDP, so as Sarah was saying, our proposed dual-use plan here at this site is very similar to the project that we presented to you folks and you approved about a year ago at Gate Street, which is in a mostly spent sand and gravel pit adjacent to a cranberry bog, where we're gonna turn that spent gravel pit into productive farmland, and then we have a kind of a diverse growing plan over the 20-year period that will accommodate, I mean, we've worked with an agronomist to identify a number of shade-tolerant crops that we expect to rotate over the term of the project. So that's very similar to what we plan to do here.
And so that would be designed very similarly to what the board is familiar with in terms of the height and the increased spacing. It would also include a single access tracker design. Again, something that we have spoken about in the past, but that is, what's earmarked for that green area? It's about 7.5 to 8 acres, the footprint of it.
It's about 8 acres of total clearing and impact, but the project itself is a little less than 6.
Okay. Just to give you an idea of scale. So that component would include, in terms of the, going back to the fire department accessibility, some sort of new road that's included in the plans, and that's something that, we can have Jesse or whomever is going to review it for this project take a look at and certainly comment on. It would be it is proposed off of the existing bog road, so exact same access as it is today all the way to that component of the project, so nothing really would change grade-wise until you get to that point, and then a new piece of the road would kind of spur off of what's out there today. So that's something that we're kind of already familiar with, that type of array. It's about a 1.4 megawatt size project. The other component is a little bit new. It's not something that I've spoken with the board about. I'm not sure that you've seen this before, but what's notated in yellow on this plan is also considered a dual-use project. It is a proposed canopy solar project over the existing bypass canal. So the irrigation canal that runs alongside the bog system would have a sort of a single row of solar canopy above it with posts on either side of the canal. Again, sited at an appropriate height and width to allow the minimal maintenance that happens, ditching, cleanouts, mowing of the banks, that sort of thing. And like we've done in the past with these dual-use ag projects, we have been working closely with the landowner and their foreman to ensure that the design meets the criteria for them to continue to operate and do what they need to do to maintain that agricultural as the first element of the project, and make sure that that's kind of the focus of, continues to be the focus of the work out here. This piece is about 5,500 linear feet, all told. And again, it's above the irrigation canal, also being designed under the SMART program, and we view it as a complementary use to what's already out there. The columns that support what we're calling the tables would be posted on either side of the canal. This is something we talked at length about with the Conservation Commission, because obviously they were interested in the wetland resource areas on the site and how that canal would still be maintained and that sort of thing. So they were pleased with how the design allows for really no impact to that canal other than just having something built around it.
Should you want me to hold that rendering?
So Hank, this is on the very last page of your plan set. So blown up here gives you just sort of an idea of what it would look like, sort of long, a linear feature. The canal is in place, the bog, everything here is as it exists today with that image sort of dropped on it. On the high side,
Yeah, let me,
you want,
yeah, take a, just for scale. So the design of these, I'm happy to rotate this or get another one we can face to the crowd if you want.
yeah.
So the design of this is a shed roof design, so a single pitch, one way or the other. In order to ensure the landowner's access to the canal over time, what we committed to is to hold the low side at least 10 feet above grade. And so that's to the bottom of a structural beam, and then the panels are above that. So essentially the low side, or the high side of the panels themselves is about 14 feet above grade, and then the low side is anywhere from 10 to 12 feet based on the width of the canal with a shed pitch. So that, those vehicles are supposedly, according to my landscape architect, to scale. So that is supposed to look pretty much how it's supposed to look.
I think this gives a really good idea of how different it is from what we're used to seeing in terms of the field of arrays. So it's an interesting approach. I have my note here that we thought it was noteworthy that this particular component, the canal component, if it was proposed as a conventional array, would require 10 to 12 acres of land. So it's a really interesting approach for somewhere that's, you know, already being used. It allows the continued use of the agricultural component and provides a significant source of renewable energy. So I thought that was really interesting. And and so back to sort of how many plan sheets are in here. As we know with these linear projects, it's kind of hard to map it. So that's really why this plan set is so thick, because there's, you know, one string on each page as it connects and a lot of match lines and that sort of thing. So we'll have this with the small size with us so we can piece it all together. But to give you, I think this, we can go to a million different sheets, but this really gives you probably just from where the distance that you're sitting, the best idea of how it is proposed to be laid out on this large site. What else do you want? I can hear you.
Just interconnection, maybe.
Oh, go ahead.
So the project will interconnect with the utility grid, and there, you can see their utility right-of-way cleared area right here. So we've been, we have a approved interconnection agreement with utility executed. I know that was one of the comments from Boston. I'm happy to provide you folks a copy of that as evidence, but it's probably 6 months old by now. But both components will interconnect there at that circuit, and there'll be some, you know, half dozen new utility poles that will go in right there to accommodate. But the projects need to be, because they're separate under the new program, they need to be separately metered. So there'll be a dedicated meter for the canopy portion of the project and a dedicated meter for the use, the farming portion of the project. But the interconnection will happen right in here.
And maybe equipment pad.
Right, so Sarah referenced that the access to the site is both through, up from Pond Street down here and also through Pond Street down here and Wenham Road over here. For our purposes, for construction access, we're gonna be using the Wenham Road access point. There's a paved apron already there, plenty wide. We'll be putting in a, you know, anti-tracking pad there. But it's an easy, you know, it's easy in and out here off of Wenham Road to get into the site. One of the comments that Fuss and O'Neill had was they were wondering about staging and stockpiling of equipment and materials. So we'll address that in our response, but it's a huge site. So we have a central staging area here where everything will get dropped off, and then during construction, we'll move it where it needs to be from this centralized location.
Do you want to talk about where the equipment pads are located?
Yeah, so most of the electrical gear that's associated with the solar projects will be located right near the interconnection point as usual. But given the linear nature of the canopy, and you'll see it in the plans, I think we just made provision for some intermediate equipment pads along the length of we don't know, we haven't, our electrical engineers doing the electrical engineering and site layout for the electrical runs at the moment. We're not exactly sure where we need pads and what needs to go on those pads, but we've provided in the plans, both to you folks and when we presented to the Conservation Commission, a conservative estimate of the number and location of pads along the way. So typically, I think we show one in here, and then down here, and down here as well. But basically, all of the electrical conduit will be hung on the racking system of the canopies in conduit. Where the canopies are not continuous, it'll be underground in the existing bog roads, and then come back up above ground where the canopies exist, and then go back below ground all the way to the point of interconnection where they'll come above ground just for that overhead, where the utility likes to see their overhead switchgear and metering. So the only time it's overhead on site is right here at the point of interconnection. Everything else is either underground or bolted along the canopy assemblies themselves.
And the last thing I really wanted to touch on was that obviously with the ground-mounted kind of traditional dual use, if you will, there's clearing, tree clearing proposed and associated with that to make way for the array. There's also a sheet in the plan set C108 that talks about some other areas further down along the edge of the canopy that talks about some selective clearing for shade management. And that's, again, something we can look at when we walk it. I think it's more effective if we should just look at it on site. And that is, factored into our line of sight cross sections as well from the closest properties. So it's a pretty effective way to show it, and based on what our take on what could be seen and what existing factors play into views from off-site properties, including topography, existing vegetation, whether or not they're within a selectively cleared area, et cetera. So a lot of the same things we have talked about in the past on other projects, we have put together at this early stage so that we'll have it for when we can look at it in the field as well. Happy to take any questions that you may have. I know it's preliminary. This is all, it's first night and brand new, but I'm happy to talk about any of the details. And Hank and Tom can certainly speak to the solar component, any details related to that as well.
I know it is, and as you explained, it's so much easier when you go out in the field and bring a plan with you.
Yep.
And actually see what the topography's like, what the area surrounding these solar panel systems or whatever's going to be out there. And you really get a better idea. But, having said that, are there any questions by any of the planning board members?
Have you ever done any projects similar to this with the canopy aspect to it?
We've done canopy projects, but not like this. Just to be, we've spent a lot of time and resources actually. We hired a geotechnical firm and a structural engineer to come up with a custom canopy design. There are vendors that will provide proprietary designs for this, but we didn't have the time to wait for them, so we went out and did it ourselves. It's that being said, it's relatively simple and straightforward. It's as Sarah described, we call them table designs. It's 4 columns and a shed roof supported by those 4 columns. So it's pretty straightforward. The construction is actually relatively straightforward as well, given the soil conditions. It's all Carver sands out there. There's no bedrock or ledge to bump into. We've installed some test piles just as part of the geotechnical process, and we can basically vibrate piles into the ground quickly and easily, get the structural loads that we need or the results that we need, and then the rest of it is just overhead construction using boom trucks that can be driven up and down those existing bog roads, which are pretty wide. So, long-winded answer, no, we haven't done a project just like this. We have several other projects planned just like this because we are kind of energized by the design. We think it's a good complementary use, and there's lots of agricultural canals that lend themselves to this, so.
Interestingly, too, as you flip through the plan set, you'll see that every page is sort of color-coded, and that is because nothing in agriculture is uniform. The canal, even though it looks on an aerial pretty straight and uniform, it is not. So there's a lot of movement even within this human-made canal. So the panels are different sizes based on where they're located, and that's what the colors are, if you flip through and are wondering about that.
Yeah, and just to be more specific, like I said, we went forward and did a custom design for this, but we didn't want to make it a custom design of infinitely varying, we didn't want to make it custom for every 20 feet of canal. So we wound up picking 4 separate canal width, or 4 separate size tables in width to accommodate the fact that the canal width itself varies over that mile long of canal from 24-ish feet to about 30 feet. So we have 4 standard width solar tables, and that's what the color coding represents. I think the vast majority of them are 10 panels wide, and then there's some 9 panel and 8 panel wide ones to accommodate where the canal itself is a little narrower.
So the canopy itself would probably be close to a mile in length?
It's about, yes, sir, it's about 5,500 feet, linear feet of coverage of the canal.
Not necessarily contiguous the entire time.
I assume it's the
Yeah,
yellow.
some breaks
Yes.
there, just because of the nature of the site, but yeah, all
And what is the
cumulatively.
land clearing that's gonna be involved with the canopy? Almost none, right?
There's no land clearing. I mean, that's the
Okay.
other nice thing
I
about
mean-
these,
Clearing of
right.
trees.
So clearing associated with the green polygon, because that's in an area that has some vegetation. And if you go back to that sheet that I was referencing, there is some selective clearing for shade management down along this edge of the canopy. So it's along the edge of that. If you look on C108, it gives you the best.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
You
so
wanna
that
wait?
gives you the best estimation of the area that would have some selective clearing associated.
And we intend, again, the purpose
Is
of.
the shaded, I'm sorry, is the shaded on 108, the clearing?
Selective clearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And just to be clear on what do we mean by selective clearing? Essentially the white pines. The trees that are going to either now or shortly cause shading problems to the canopies. Our expectation, based on talking to landscape architect folks, is once we do that, we expect the understory to actually thicken up and fill out over time, because the shade from the white pines will be removed.
Exactly.
But we don't, like I said, we don't need to, there's
Clear cut.
no need to clear
No.
down to the ground any of that area along the canal.
Right, so it's the tallest trees, and the other, so shade management, but also fall hazard from some of those white pines, as we all know from living here. Any major windstorm, that's what goes.
There's
and-
some that need to come down.
Yeah, there are some that have health issues to begin with,
Right.
but, so, it's going to be done using common sense and,
Right, and I'm going there for the sake of, is any of this land clearing gonna open up suggested places where people aren't gonna be able to see it, and
Right.
it's not gonna be 100%
Right. So
able
that-
to be screened?
yep, I mean, and that's the reason that we did the cross-sections of the abutting properties, and that's factored into that.
And I think, we can talk about, we should talk about it more after we actually get out there and put eyeballs on it naturally, but
Sure.
I think most of those white pines provide very limited buffering at the moment.
Right.
Like a previous gentleman said, all the foliage is up about 100 feet in the air, where the sight lines are down in the, first 10, 20 feet, so.
Are there, where are the electrical storage units gonna be Or are they gonna be like?
Battery storage?
Yeah, battery storage.
No
No
batteries,
batteries.
no batteries are proposed for this project.
Oh, it's just gonna go straight online, huh? And I see where it's one of the villages down there that's on the lower right-hand side.
This is,
This is Bow
this is
Street.
Bow Street.
Oh, that's Bow Street, okay.
Yep,
That's where it's more residential than any other area
yep.
surrounding that. Which way are the panels gonna be facing? Are they gonna be facing away from those houses?
Well, we can address that with the cross-sections, because there's not a blanket answer to that.
Okay.
The panel, the shed pitch changes based on optimizing sunlight.
Oh, okay.
So because of the orientation of the canal, it changes.
So you can see on this one,
Those
this
aren't,
panel,
those aren't right.
but just to show the
Yeah,
different
sure.
directions. This is just for visual purposes, it's not, locking it into this exhibit behind it, but it just shows how, for example, this table is facing this direction, and this one behind it is facing the other, and then sets that row.
So you see the structure and not the panel from
Yeah,
the
it's a,
houses you're thinking.
it's a really low pitch, though. It's a 1.5/12, is that? So essentially, from my perspective, from looking at the elevation of all those folks on Bow Street, they'll see kind of the top of it regardless of which way it's facing, because the pitch is so shallow.
From many of those properties on Bow Street, the existing topography works in the residents' favor, where, the house is lower than the topography that rises up with existing vegetation on it. And again, we can get into all of the nuances of that, but we looked at it from that entire area. So we have cross-sections from,
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, you want to,
the big board.
It almost cuts into that other big land clearing project, huh? On the golf course.
The
It's
Big
close.
Pines.
Yeah,
this one here?
It's about 200 feet away.
Yeah.
yeah.
The property line is about.
I recall because I think one of the concerns we had was issues of how much Wade Street was gonna see.
Yep, it
And
was-
Bow Street is perpendicular to
Right,
that.
so this is Bo, this is Wade over here, our neighbors that we talked
Yep.
to on that project.
Eight
Yeah,
Good
so
project.
if you see you can see from where you are, the pink lines, all of the houses, we've taken a perspective from all of those houses and given you a line of sight to look at, as well as from up here. This is Bunny's Road, which interestingly is in Plymouth, but all of the homes are in Carver, so. Yeah, just to, that was our take on what we thought was important to showcase to the board and to the public in terms of lines of sight from the abutting neighborhood. And again, this is such a narrow band when all is said and done, from 200-plus feet away through the woods behind a hill in many cases. So I think this was a very helpful exercise, I think, for all of us to go through, and I think it will help the board as well as we kind of walk through this and have this with us.
So for the public, it would probably be helpful that it almost is gonna represent what we see on Route 44 when we're coming before the exit. However, the height is gonna be a little bit different.
Yep.
It's
It
gonna be a
panels up on-
long swath
Yeah,
instead of large
just a single
sections.
row, yeah, a single row.
Hopefully, we're not walking this whole entire thing.
Just
As
a mile.
It's
It's-
miles.
It's very accessible by truck.
Let's see, walking, let's say 15 minutes walking.
Yeah,
Get a
you
golf
can pretty much drive.
I was gonna say, maybe you should grab some of the golf carts
Yeah.
from,
Yeah.
the golf course or Patriot Pine, kicking
It's
Patriot
rough terrain
Pine.
between here and here.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But yeah, it's very accessible. I mean, I think robust was actually Jesse's word that he used to describe the access in and around this site. So, they've got a lot of heavy equipment coming in and out as it is today. So the roadway network is pretty good.
So as far as Bow Street, you said the minimum would be 200 feet for that?
Yes, the setback, so the setback of 200 feet, so, I mean, under the new bylaw, we could have come to the board and talked to the abutters and got affidavits and reduced the setback.
Right.
But there was no need for that. we were,
Because the canal's where the canal is,
Yeah,
and the canal
right.
is, and the canal was more than 200 feet from the property line in all
right.
cases, so.
So in some cases, it's 1,000 feet away from the property line. In some cases, it's 200 plus feet away, or, you know, just over 200, but yeah. So we were able to meet that easily.
And in all cases, additionally, we're leaving at least 100 feet of existing
Vegetation.
wooded vegetation on the property. More than that in most cases, frankly, and that doesn't include the backyards of the folks on Bow Street. So in some, it's easier to see in the sections, but in some cases, there's hundreds of feet of wooded vegetation, and then hundreds more feet to the canopies.
And in looking at the line, the pinkish red line.
Yep.
That would be your 200-foot setback
That,
line?
that's not, that's
Or
not
is that the
necessarily-
property line?
That's property line there. These are the section lines.
And those are not necessarily 200 feet, that's just to the canopy, so that varies.
Right. You don't have the 200-foot setback on it?
No, it's not. We can add that next round if we need to.
Yeah, I think that would be important,
The-
all of those.
The setback on
So all
the,
of those houses can see where the setback 200 feet is gonna be from.
That's a good point.
Is it on the cross-section? The property line's on the cross-section.
Yeah, but I don't think
Yeah.
it's
Don't the 200 feet.
we can add that.
You want to show them the cross-section? The sheet.
I have them on the back. I mean, if you wanna, we don't have to get specific necessarily, but
Yeah.
just to give you an idea what they look like. They're so unwieldy. So this correlates to each of the pink lines, the pink sections, including topography, for example, and taken from a consistent perspective from each of the homes. You can see there's differences with each, but, you know, some are, it's very easy to see, some it's a little bit more difficult to see, but there's quite a range. And like I said, a very worthwhile exercise. So.
All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, first thing I'm going to make a statement, and I'm glad Jim picked up on this. There's a parcel of property that's owned by the Redevelopment Authority in 0 Wade Street, and I am the chairman of the RDA. So I'm going to reach out, make sure that there's no conflict.
Okay.
We don't have any, I personally don't have any investment into it. I don't have no potential for any gain in it. We're in care of custody for the community, for the selectmen to dispose of that property.
It's this one, right?
Ye-
Yeah.
Yep. So I want to make that clear. Yep,
I was just gonna point out, it was also an abutting property for the Patriot Pines project.
and there wasn't a deal with that either.
Right.
So I just want to make sure, I want to be public about it, saying, you know.
Thank
And
you.
we'll just do the process all over again. The question I have, I love the concept of going over the canals. That's pretty ingenious. Utilizes that space pretty good and for a good use. Question would be is fencing.
So, Mr. Sinclair, similar to the Gate Street project, our understanding in review of the National Electric Code and discussion with our electrical engineer is, since all of the electrical equipment will be out of reach from someone standing at ground level, no fence is required to comply with the NEC. So we're not proposing one. Obviously, a fence along the landowner's agricultural canal would be a significant hardship to the landowner for mowing the canal banks and canal access. So we're not proposing a fence along either the canopy portion of the project or the dual-use portion of the project for a similar reason.
So I'll make a suggestion. The 2020 National Electrical Code has not been adopted by the state of Massachusetts yet. From my understanding, being an electrical inspector, it will be adopted January 5th timeline, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I know there was, and I don't know the specifics of a lot of the changes. I would suggest that they review that, because I know they had in conference and designing the new code that there was a lot of significant proposals for changes to the solar end of
Aspects
it.
of it, sure.
So I'll just put that out there for you.
How is that made public? Does everyone have access to that?
National Electrical Code 2020 is out nationwide. The state of Massachusetts doesn't adopt the National Electrical Code because we amend it. And the state of Massachusetts has not adopted that as of yet, and that will be adopted in January, from what I was told.
Okay.
Last week or the week before.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure to confer with our electrical engineer to check back to make sure there's nothing that changed since the last time we went through this exercise.
I specifically can't speak to any of the changes. There was so many changes that it was not even worth even starting to comprehend it at that point. But where the project's gonna be in 2020,
Thank you.
Anything else?
Question, why no battery storage with this project? This is different than what we've seen lately.
that's a
Well,
good point.
Frankly, we've been working on this project since before batteries were cool. So there was not a compelling technical reason to include batteries, either from a utility standpoint or otherwise. We might, at some point, moving forward, like to incorporate batteries. I think we just would come back to you folks to ask permission to add them at that point in time. But at this point, we're not proposing batteries. Oh, right. So Tom just pointed out to me, like we heard earlier hearing, applicant pointed out the fact that utilities gave out a bad news letter to hundreds and hundreds of projects regarding a transmission study requirement mandated by ISO New England for lots of these solar projects at the distribution level. So we got that same bad news letter for a bunch of our projects as well. This project does not have that requirement, so there's no ASO study requirement for this particular project.
Thank you. Anything else before? Anything else? Out in the public, out in the audience, is there anybody that's a direct abutter? Could you put your hand up? So we do have a few people that are direct abutters. Is there anybody that would like to speak? Have any questions? Any concerns? If you would, if you could just use that microphone there, give us your name and address and.
I'm Phil Shannon from 7 Bow Street, right here. So,
Okay, right on the, right where it turns.
yeah, right in the corner there.
Yep, okay.
There's definitely no site issue where I live. There's tons of woods between us.
Your name again, sir?
Phil Shannon.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to, thought it was important to speak about this because in the past, like on the Purge Street project, I spoke out in opposition of it. And then, so when I saw this, and I just reviewed everything, and I'm really familiar, we've lived here for 15 years, so I'm really familiar with all this area. And I just think it's a good project, and it avoids like some of the problems that other projects had. So as someone who spoke at town meeting against a project, and I even said then, I'm not against all solar projects. So this is a perfect example of something that I think is a good project. And, I just think like where I live and a lot of my neighbors, there's a lot of woods there, so I don't think sites are gonna be a problem around here. And it seems like a good, I like the new technology that you guys are doing, and, so I just want to come out and say that I think it's a good project. Two
Thank
thumbs
you.
up.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. Something that we don't hear all the time.
Refreshing.
I wish we heard more of. It would make me feel better, but,
Well,
anyone else would like to speak? Please, sir.
Good evening. My name is Marty Colligan. I live on Pondview Way, which is off of Bunny, which is probably right in here somewhere. I know the code. I have a place there. My main concern of this project, okay, is environmental impact. I don't know if it's supposed to be brought up here or it's supposed to be brought up as conservation. You're building a 3 megawatt, okay, power station here. Are we gonna put in a substation or transformers, which do have oil in them? Okay, and the people around all this area, I just put one in, was I put a new well in. Hopefully, the engineer, electrical engineer can design something that either a contained system to contain the oil. And you mentioned the electrical code. The being not fenced in, that was concerned because it's a cranberry bogs. And Carver's known for cranberry bogs with kids, okay? And if it's not protected, kids are gonna get to it. And I don't know what these solar panels put out for power. Correct me, is it DC power?
That's
Okay,
correct,
it's
sir.
correct, DC? Okay, is it, what, 240 or 480?
It's 480 volt DC.
480, okay, and you're putting something to change the AC voltage.
There's
Okay, that's
inverters.
this all gonna be under that canopy?
Just, Mr. Chair, should I respond?
Well, if you have questions, if you could just.
Okay, you want me to ask you the questions and you can,
No,
okay,
you
here's,
can ask me the questions, and then generally what happens, unless you have a million questions, if you just have a few, so that, or you could just say a few and then let them answer,
okay,
instead of just going back and forth.
all right.
I'm happy to answer, Mr. Chair. if that's-
Sure, go ahead.
So, a couple things you said. Let's use this picture better. So, no, we won't be building a substation to connect.
Okay. So what do you have, multiple transformers?
We have essentially one or two project transformers for this canopy section. We'll be using what are known as string inverters. So about every table or so will have, it'll have a couple dozen panels that'll feed a small string inverter that'll convert it from DC to AC.
Okay,
And then all of those string inverter feeds will run up to one or two project transformers that'll step it up to 25,000 volts,
which will hook onto the primary,
which is the primary
Right.
circuit going through that.
right behind on Bunny's Road, you gotta hook on there, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
and that cable will be all on the ground, as you
So-
stated,
Well, it'll either be mounted on the canopies high enough so that it's compliant with the National Electric Code,
okay,
or it'll be buried in the bog roads.
okay,
And the only time it'll be above ground after that is when you get up to the point of interconnection here on that circuit where there'll be some utility poles, there'll be a riser.
right, come up out of the ground and up the pole,
That's right.
okay, okay. All
And
right.
as far as the transformers, I believe, and I don't want to, we'll check and I'll be happy to provide the board with a follow-up answer. I believe we use mineral oil-based transformers. So from an environmental and I think they have secondary containment anyways, but it's mineral oil. So from
That falls under conservation because within a certain distance of wetlands, they gotta have a containment area?
right,
Right.
it would, but I think it's more properly in the discretion of this board because it's not in conservation's jurisdiction. We're not putting those transformers near the wetland or the
Okay.
buffer. But it's no different from the other projects that the ground-mounted solar projects and those transformers that the board has seen. They're environmentally benign transformers by design because of that issue.
Okay. Another question. Noise. These transformers, transformers make noise, okay? I live in that area. I can hear the pumps running when they're pumping the water, and I live a good distance away. Quiet night, those transformers gonna be quiet? I mean,
That night, they're not gonna be making any noise.
well, okay, go ahead, but
The transformers will be here,
Right.
right? for
One on the
both-
canopy, yeah.
One for the canopy, one or two for the canopy, and one for the farming dual use area. So a total of 2 to 3 transformers.
Right.
They'll sound just like the existing utility transformers
Okay.
that are commercial here in town. There's a low hum, there's, from where you are over here, I
Okay.
can't imagine you could ever hear it given the ambient noise around there. Right, just the wind.
Huh?
The pumps.
The pumps, it's nowhere near as loud as those well pumps. So it's a hum. We can provide information in our response. I think we've got manufacturer's data comparing it to like a window unit, an AC window
Okay.
unit, essentially.
Okay.
But at night, but at night it's not running. So in the quietest times of the day, it won't be making any
Right.
noise because there's no
It's not
power-
producing.
No power going.
Right, no producing. Okay. Those more any questions? Okay?
Good, very good, thank you.
Yep, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, let's schedule a site visit.
We should, one hour again, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, because people can pull off.
Then we can hop in,
Right,
up in the back of your car.
right, I'll clean it up.
Now, are you available on weekends?
Sure.
We have some people that are only available on weekends.
Yeah, I mean, the days are short now, so if we have to, I mean,
Yeah, we're absolutely, whenever.
we're willing to if we need to.
I think we could accommodate more board members on a weekend than we could, trying to do, except for Jen, do you?
Yeah, weekends aren't good for me.
Oh,
Well, we're happy, I mean, if you want to do multiple, we can do that as well. Make ourselves available whenever at the board's,
I didn't mention this earlier, but I will be on vacation and out of town from the 6th of December to the 14th.
6 to the 14th.
And Mr. Chairman, I have multiple days off from work, including the 4th, the 5th, Monday the 2nd.
Well, like I say, if we have to have a couple of visits to accommodate everybody, then that's what we'll do. Our next planning board, we'd probably like to get this done before December 10th? Okay,
yeah, we'd love to.
coming pretty close to the end of this month. Let me see. So, we have this, well, so we have 2 weekends, so it would either be like Saturday, the 30th of November, or is that November? Yeah, that's November. And then we have the Saturday, the 7th, and the 7th. So we just have 2 Saturdays. I don't know if we want to do it on a Sunday or not, but a Saturday, is any one of those days good for people? Saturday, November 30th, or Saturday, December 7th?
I'll be out of town on the 7th, and
Okay.
quite honestly,
We can,
I'm working straight out. But I would be more than happy to make, arrangements before the 6th.
What
to
about
meet with you.
a weekday before the 6th? Does that work for you? Or are you thinking just weekends?
No, I wasn't thinking weekends. I'm
Weekday.
basically working when it's not raining.
Yeah,
We can go out in the rainstorm if you like.
I know
Well, I
you
know-
always want to do that. It's really not fun.
I know we can usually catch Jen on a Monday, December 2nd.
This one I'll actually be away because of 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, and 5 are wide open. Next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
Okay.
or the 9th, or the 10th.
I have
Yeah.
Wednesday or
3, 4, 5, 9,
Wednesday,
10 are
Thursday open.
fine.
And I can do any time.
So maybe we start with a weekday, and
Okay.
then for those who can't do that, we can pick up a weekend day.
Sure.
Because, I mean, Jim, I'm assuming weekday is probably preferable for you too, if you're here already.
Kelly, what day for you?
I can do Wednesday or Thursday, December 4th or 5th, anytime during the day.
Okay.
I tend to like to do mornings because of Lex, like 9:30, 10-ish.
That works.
Wednesday, the 4th, at 10? Who can attend?
I would come to.
Oh, wait, I lied. I hadn't updated my calendar. My daughter has dance then. I can do Wednesday at 11.
Wednesday at 11, okay.
I could do 11.
So, Wednesday at 11.
Or if you prefer to do Thursday on the earlier side, that's fine with us too.
Either is
I'm
fine.
saying us, but
If Wednesday's good for you, Wednesday at 11 is fine.
The days off.
So we'll do Wednesday at 11, and then we'll make whoever can't attend, we can set another time or a weekend if that works.
Either that, if I go the 11th, well, yeah, it's a big site, though. If I go out with another planning board member, I may
Yeah.
get lost. So,
It's massive. I mean, if you stay on the road, you're good, but you won't necessarily know where all the,
yeah, yeah.
does that work for you?
And we're calling this Zero Pond,
No.
and
Or
then you
will?
need a place to meet.
Yeah. What was it, 55?
Yeah, well, can you send something to Jim about it?
Yeah, so when we walked it with Concom, we met off of Wenham Road. I believe it's,
33.
oh, why was I thinking 55? So the Wenham Road access, there's nothing there, but it is a paved
I
entrance.
think it's right across from an antique shop, isn't it? Isn't there like an antique sign hanging on
There's a house across the street from it that's red, I think.
Right.
But I can send
How
Jim the actual.
farther back this way, before Bunny's Road? Oh,
Oh,
It's a good distance
It's a
before.
good,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's a few miles, because Bunny's Run is in Plymouth.
right,
It's a ways back.
oh, okay. So when we're speaking Wenham, we're not speaking the old 44?
No, Wenham Road.
Not to that point yet.
Right,
Not
right,
that
right,
far.
right, right,
It's not
road,
that far.
right, that's one street, got it.
Yeah, so you come, so Plymouth is up here, you're coming south into Carver,
Mhm.
and it's on your left. And I can send Jim the number. Tom says it's closest to number 33 Wenham, and I'll just confirm that. It's
And that's Wenham
Wenham.
Street, not Wenham Road, because I know there's a difference.
Wenham Road.
I think it's road.
Okay.
I'll confirm all of that and send it to Jim, so we're all on the same page. Once you see it, it's like you've driven by it 10,000 times, but
Right, I
once you
think
see
it's
that
the
it's
ones that they
there,
make a big deal of, that they're all, everybody stops to take pictures of picking.
you can't see the box from the road at all.
Oh, okay.
Not even close. It's a long way in
Right.
from the street. So you would never, you would never even know it's there. We've all driven by it a million times. It's just a paved entrance in the middle of a residential area, so, yep.
So for those who can't attend the 4th, would Saturday, the 7th be a good time for? Okay, well, we'll
We'll leave it, if you gotta leave it open for me, I
leave it open.
can't commit to
So
anything.
Jen can attend what,
The
Wednesday?
4th at 11 is great.
I can attend,
I will try to.
and
I'll try to
Kevin will
get
try.
away from work.
Kelly will be there. So the two people that can't would be Jim and Will. So we'll just keep that in mind, and we'll just have to try to do a time.
Yeah, we can do, if either one of, Mr. Sinclair or Mr. Hoffman want to come separately at some other time, just, we'd be happy if you want to just get in contact with us.
Yeah, it's no problem.
All right.
Should we schedule
Thank you.
it now for the Saturday, the 30th?
No, I think they're talking about the 7th, not 30th, after.
I don't think they know if they're gonna, I don't think
They're
might be able to attend that Saturday, so it might have to be the day.
I can do that.
Huh?
Monday the 9th, the day before our meeting. The weekday's better for you instead of coming on a Saturday.
It doesn't matter, whatever's, it's at your convenience, so you tell us.
Monday the 9th, at what time?
I have a seminar that day, but
Oh,
Hank can
okay.
certainly meet you, so that's fine.
What time's best for you?
9 o'clock?
Sure.
Okay, so we have 2 dates.
Thank you.
So we'll see, between that. Some people miss Wednesday, maybe they can do it Monday. We'll see. All right. So we'll A motion to continue this public hearing.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Did you want to say something before?
I'm not in a butter. I just have a question, and again, just trying to inform, I think, people about the amount of projects possibly going in. Borrego had said that they have 10 currently in progress in Carver. How many do you have currently in progress, including this one?
Mr. Chair, can I get her name?
Yeah, could you give us a name and address, please?
Oh, sorry, it's Liz Taylor, 31 Russell Street Farm. I'm just curious, I'm just trying to help people to sort of understand the scope of the amount of projects that are going into town in a relatively quick time. I think it's great that you're finding new technologies, but I also find it really interesting that 2 weeks ago, we heard about new technologies, which didn't include this one. So I'm just curious about, Borrego had mentioned they have 10 projects currently. They have 4 that are about to be started in the spring, including the one they talked about tonight. You have Clean Energy, who has 2 going, potentially another one with the High Street. How many do you currently have in the works? And you have Gate Street, this project. How many other ones do you currently have going? Just those 2?
Just these 2. We have the Gate Street project, which is approved, and we have this project, which we're seeking approval.
Do you know how many of these solar projects there are pending right now?
We could look that information up if you want to give the office a call or give us Jim your number or email address, and when he gets a chance, he may be able to send that off to you.
Okay. I'm just curious, it just seems like there's so many going up so fast, and so few are fully completed before we're projecting new ones to see how they're working. You know, my concern is just that the only thing I think, for whatever it's worth, I have a pool in my backyard. I know that when it rains, it can lift the water table up 4 or 5 inches on a good rainstorm. If we're covering the water table on the bogs, what does that do to the ditches? Is it still gonna get water? Are they gonna end up drying out? You know, if you're damming off all the water from going in, how is that managed? Is that?
Well, for one thing, all water drains to the ground.
Right.
So it's stopping the water from going in the ground, or it's not increasing any of the water going into the ground. Solar panels have a negative effect, I would think, on any kind of rainfall. Because everything goes off the panel and hits the ground. And so, that isn't a thing. But yet our engineers look at any kind of drainage. You know, they have to do a drainage analysis if it's required. So, but in the bogs, the water either falls on the bog or it falls on the solar panel, and then that falls on the bog, so it's the same.
I was just thinking, like, if they're covered, you know, if it was sheltering it.
No, I don't think it would have any effect at all.
So, Mr. Chairman, my motion is to continue the public hearing for 0 Pond Street to our next meeting on the 10th, correct?
December 10th.
At 7 o'clock.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll see you at the site visit.
We're gonna really have to bring our hiking shoes for this one.
Do you want me to take these back with me and we'll bring them to the site visit, the ones we handed out?
Sure.
Can I keep mine?
You can. I just don't know if you want to lug it around.
You can give
Sorry, you know mine.
All right.
You want one? Want to keep one?
Sure. I think sending that to the abutters was a great idea. Even though a site visit shows more than that, just having that is more than a public notice. It just gives a little,
I can straighten that out if you want.
You gonna have words with her?
Wouldn't be the first time. Don't be loud.
yeah, I just think that's so smart.
Until I resign,
Yeah.
we'll be okay.
That's really smart.
Well, that's right. I'm up this year.
But you are going to bring them.
I'll bring them. We have some more too, but just, I'll bring the stack.
All right, continuing on to other business, we have planning board member notes. Does any member have anything that they would like to say at this particular time?
I got nothing. Just everybody have a safe and happy Thanksgiving.
And I will. I mean, it's already been said, but I will be on vacation, the 6th to the 18th, and 14th, so just want that known.
Have a good vacation.
Thank you.
If I want to talk about complete streets, I wait till planning director does, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get to that. We will get to that.
Got it.
All right, so we go, planning board member notes. Planning director notes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have a couple of things here. What I'm doing, I needed 2 more plan sets signed, endorsed for the A&R.
Okay.
So we had the appropriate number of copies, so thank you for signing those. One of the things was the complete streets. The select board approved the complete streets policy. They did make an amendment to add 2 resident members to the group that was listed in the policy. And Jen sent an email. She would be interested in, we got an email to be appointed to that committee. And so what I was going to recommend to the board is that we send a request to the select board requesting that Jen be appointed to the Complete Streets Committee.
Do we have to vote on that, or?
I think it just helps having a vote on it.
Okay.
Can I chime in? The whole because I had emailed you, and I
Yes, I did.
sent it to Ron Clark too. My main concern was that in the newest master plan, in the back appendix, it mentions complete streets. And it specifically says the planning board should be the lead party on that. So I heard that the select board was planning on forming a committee, and it concerned me that it was being taken out of our hands into their hands. We formed subcommittees before. I know the master plan committee was born from this board, so I didn't want us to, I guess, lose that because it should fall under our jurisdiction. And then going one step further, I desperately want to be included on that because it piggybacks what I've done. So I think it falls under us. I don't think it falls under their jurisdiction. So I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think we should be appointing everybody.
I don't know, how does that go, Jim? Do you know?
Well, typically what happens is that there's sort of a complete streets committee that consists of, various representatives of the department that would consider, the projects. So when the policy went up to the select board, there was discussion there, and they wanted to be able to appoint 2 citizen or resident members to the Complete Streets Committee. So that was what got voted on, and so that's what the select board approved for the Complete Streets policy. So I think it's not really wrestling something out of the planning board's control. It's a committee made of residents, and I would just suggest that we would have, the planning board can make a recommendation to have someone on that committee to help represent the planning board. And then, in addition to that, we have the sort of formal staff committee with the 2 resident members, but there could also be, say, a subcommittee of the planning board, because I know Jen mentioned that she worked on a number of different projects on, I think, what trails, walking trails, biking.
All of them, yeah.
Right, so that could be part of a, say, a subcommittee that could work on implementing those proposals and also work with the Complete Streets Committee, make sure that when road projects are proposed, we could take a look at those with our kind of more citizen or planning board appointing committee to make recommendations as to what should be included on future projects coming up. So I don't think it's already a done deal that the select board made those changes. I don't think it hurts anything to have them, appoint a couple of people. I just think going forward, we know we have a body information, we have very committed residents who want to push those proposals forward, that we still can do that with the way it's set up.
I think having residents involved is fantastic. I think what the select board added is great, it adds value. But I go back, you guys were on the committee when I was appointed to the master plan committee. As a resident, I would think that this same thing would fall under our jurisdiction to appoint, have the residents come, but have us appoint them, include residents. I just think we should be the appointing body per the master plan.
Why don't we,
And there is a conflict between, because the Complete Streets policy is put out by the state, says it's the select board that has to adopt the policy. And so that was a change that they made while we were downstairs with our meeting. But I'll leave it up to the board to see if they want to.
It says they have to adopt it, not complete it, not design it.
well, maybe that's a discussion you'll have with the committee members when, if you get on the committee.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't, in my opinion, if I can be left out of something, I will be. And this is something that I feel very strongly is something we're supposed to lead. The master plan says we're supposed to lead it. And it says the planning board is to do the development of it. The planning board and the DPW are the lead parties. And then further right on the chart, the board of selectmen are to adopt the policy, but not create it. That falls under us. So if we don't assume control of the process, or the committee, have the committee report to us, we should be at the helm of things. If for some reason that doesn't happen, I really want surety that I will be on the committee.
Okay. I think that's what we're discussing tonight, whether.
Well, it's in this policy that the select board did, whatever it is. It says here that, excuse me, I just had it. The Complete Streets Committee consists of representatives of the Operation and Maintenance Department, which makes sense, at Johnny Woods. Planning and Community Development, Board of Health, School Department, Town Administrator's Office, and 2 members at large. So Planning and Community Development is us. If this board decides to make a motion, which I will do, to have Jen Bogart as our representative on the Streets Committee, then they should abide by that.
And I'll second your motion.
And that was a motion.
So she
Can I vote on that?
is the representative of
Absolutely.
our,
I think you can.
so she would be the representative of our planning and community development part.
Yep.
It says 2 at-large members are appointed by the select board.
Yeah, they'll appoint 2
Okay.
members somewhere and citizens at large. But it says representatives of those boards, so you're our representative.
I would wait, you guys didn't vote, let's make it official.
What do you mean?
You made the motion, he seconded it, I didn't hear an official. Vote Jen in.
Will you go along with this? If,
You-
Are you sure you really want to do that?
you're not gonna walk out on us if we vote you.
I have signed up for every subcommittee
Representative.
possible, you know me, I'm in on everything.
All right, we have a motion and a second to appoint Jen Bogart as our planning board complete street representative. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you guys, I really, really mean that. I've been passionate about this for 8 years. I won't let you down, I will give you updates, and I
Okay,
will
that'd
represent
be
the
good.
planning board well.
Did I hear
Thank
you say no? Oh, I'm sorry.
I only say that to my daughters.
All right. And did you have anything else for us tonight, Jim?
So the other thing are meeting dates. So we have the next meeting coming up with, which is December 10th. The following meeting will be December 24th, which is Christmas Eve, and that's a town holiday, so town hall will be closed, so we will not have a meeting on that date. And then in January, the meeting dates are the 14th and the 28th. So I just want to make sure we get everyone on to that. And then the next item is, I put in there, just, the deadline came out for putting in placeholders for the annual town meeting. And so there's just a couple things that we've encountered in the last 6 months. And one of the items not listed here is dealing with solar, the solar questions we have. But in the zoning regulation, this comes from Bob Francis, our building commissioner. There's language regarding duplex and two-family dwellings. He needs to have the language clarified. Apparently the use table doesn't kind of give clear information about it. So he's just looking for clarification on that regarding duplex and two-family dwellings. The next item regarding accessory apartments, the current bylaw restricts, based on age and also handicap accessibility. It's a 3-year special permit. It also says that if the family member or other member who, if they leave the house, then you no longer can use it as an accessory apartment, unless I guess you go back and get another special permit. And the thought being is, with a lot of concern about affordable housing, if you take away those age restrictions and other restrictions, and you just come in with a special permit, regardless for anyone. So it could be a family that has, say, an older daughter or son, come in, or some other relative that's not a father or mother. That could be a way of affordable housing where you're not impacting, you're using the existing footprint of a house, you're using the existing road system, you're using, the existing septic system, that shouldn't be a major impact. So that would be something I would put onto the, request that the board consider to put onto the warrant, for further study. And then there's also another similar section that apparently, I guess, is the way, another way to get an accessory unit is through the section 2244 borders and single-family dwelling provision. So we would look at those two things together to say, okay, do you really need this one or that one, or can you just make one clean one? And then the next one down is the accessory dwelling units above commercial developments. We do have a developer who's interested in redeveloping a commercial property in town, and they would like to do residential apartments above. One of the problems we have is that you can only do that if there's a transfer of development rights. And at this stage of the game, we don't have any development rights in a pool or anything like that. So one of the thoughts would be to make it a little bit more flexible, where the planning board had the option to look at other types of things, such as, say, if this person had a piece of land that the town, say it's an agricultural piece of land that the town wants to see preserved. So say if this developer acquired that property and then used that as a trade-off, or if there's some sort of conservation restriction that the developer could pay, and then that could be, considered. So it would just be opening this up so that there's other options that the planning board could consider, and then that would allow, the developer to come in. So we do have a developer, they're looking at, getting water line extension, they're working with another developer who's looking at a commercial property to provide water for. But in order to make the project financially feasible for this one developer, they need to have that, additional units to make it worthwhile. Then finally, with the non-medical marijuana overlay district, I'm just proposing we review the bylaw. One of the problems we have is with the buffer zone. There's a church down on South Tremont Street. We have a number of proposals who are looking to do retail. But they can't do any retail because the buffer zone pretty well eliminates all prospective properties that could be developed for retail use. So, and then the buffer zone used in the bylaw is from an older version of legislation that was passed, and then there was some newer legislation amending that legislation. And so that buffer zone in that most recent legislation only uses primary and secondary schools as the basis, so public and private, as the buffer area that needs to be considered. So I'm just proposing that we, the planning board, look at this and take a look at the regulations and determine what changes should be taken a look at and be modified going forward. And of course, then we can also put down, reviewing the solar bylaw, addressing any concerns from folks that we've heard from recently. So I just wanted to get a kind of a sense from the planning board, is that something that you want me to go ahead and submit to the select board's office as items that we would like to have considered at the annual town meeting?
I think so. I think they're all good ideas.
Is the zoning board still hearing that the marijuana done in this, near the church, or is that already over with?
You're right, there were two cases. One of them withdrew. And then the other one, the ZBA suggested they look at maybe adjusting the property lines. And I just heard back that they could adjust it, but there's still 3 feet difference between what they can do and then still leaving room for the existing buildings on the property to meet the zoning requirements. Because you can't, go and make something non-conforming. So that's the issue. So it still kind of hangs up that whole district. And gets kind of frustrating. You're dealing with all these people calling you all the time. You have to explain to it, you can't really do anything here. So if it's still the intent of the town to have the retail, then, consideration should be made to adjust the buffer
Just made a
requirement.
question. You made the comment that the ZBA is thinking about readjusting the property lines?
No, not the ZBA.
Okay.
The suggestion was to the applicant to talk to the property owner to look at, could the property lines be adjusted so that the 500-foot buffer was pushed back. And so they've done that, and it doesn't look like that's feasible.
As this is written, are we able to look at other aspects of the marijuana bylaw too? Because since so many shops have opened up since this was passed, it might be nice to have the option to alter more than just the buffer zone. Is that possible?
Right, no, so I was looking at, look at the buffer zone. Then also, I've had a number of requests. There's the cultivation processing zone up on the north side. Well, I've had people who said, well, we want to open up a processing facility, but we also want to do retail. So maybe the thought is to look at that and say, okay, well, we have a limit of 2 retail licenses in town. So maybe keep the 2 retail licenses, but then you open it up so that if someone wanted to do a multiple use type of facility, so it'd be retail, manufacturing, and processing, they could potentially do that in there, but at least, take a look at that and see if that's something worth, something the committee thinks is worth doing.
But like all the other stuff too, not just the zoning where stuff would go, like when we had, the current bylaw has, the hours of operations and standards of signage and what it looks like, and there's just a lot more in the bylaw. Could we review that too and not just the buffer zone and like, does this have to be reworded, or can you just put it in as a, we're gonna,
Well, I think,
The mayor.
yeah, I kind of say review bylaw, and I just gave some examples, but we could
Okay.
add additional examples as well. Just to
Jen,
say,
you mean like they are not required to be open during the times of hours of a school or during times of hours of a church service? Is that
well,
what you're
there's just a ton more in the bylaw other than just where it can go. So if we're gonna look at where it can go, let's look at everything else, because so many shops have opened up since last year. Let's see if stuff good, stuff bad, what we wanna do. If we're gonna look at it, let's look at the whole thing.
Well, this is just a placeholder to get something in the warrant. This is
Right.
exactly.
I just wanna make sure the placeholder, because it looks like it's only focusing on the buffer zone. I just wanted to make sure it's okay to talk about other stuff if it just says that,
They were
so.
talking about section 5,000, the non-medical marijuana
Cool.
overlay district. That'll
Okay.
include everything in that.
And then who is the developer you're referencing for section 2270? You mentioned a developer there?
I say it's still kind of confidential, because they haven't applied forward with the application yet.
I was just if we're looking at changing a bylaw with someone specific in mind, it might be nice to
It's,
have that information.
we can talk privately.
Okay.
Yeah. But, you know, it would look at multiple properties to say, okay, what,
Right.
you know, how would these other properties
Yeah.
be affected, or?
Just wondering if there was a reason that we were doing it, so I was just curious.
Mhm.
Okay, that's all.
And then, do we want to add something regarding the solar, review the solar bylaw, and make appropriate adjustments?
I would,
Yes.
I definitely would, because I think with the new solar incentive programs definitely has got, a lot of activity in town, and I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the existing bylaw as it stands now does not even touch the surface of the dual purpose or, in reference to, battery storage, this over the canopies, stuff like that.
Well,
So I think we should better define that, based on what's in front of us and what we're experiencing.
and then I've been thinking about the dual use and what we've run into, like the Perry's property. We might want to look into something about elevated houses above solar fields. And see if we can come up with some sort of bylaws for that. See if what we have now is adequate or inadequate, and if it can be improved. So,
That's a good point, because I know some other people I've talked with that have property overlooking bogs. Their main concern now is if the bog owners decide to go solar, they bought a house, obviously, with a view. And if they're 30 feet up in the air, you're not talking about just one isolated, it could have the whole neighborhood that's overlooking bogs now, so you have to be proactive on that.
elevation is everything, and every project is different. And,
Especially with the dual use, I mean, dual use was so new when we first talked about that bylaw. Now it's here and it's happening, and it sounds as though it's happening a lot more than we thought.
And then if you did standard, it would still be a problem, with the
Right.
elevated
Now
property.
you're talking minimum 10-foot high, that.
Yeah, because they still have to be able to harvest and grow the vine and all that other stuff.
Right.
so that's something that we should take a look at.
Okay, so what I'll
Get
do,
into any more specific,
I can word it, and if you want me to send it to you, Jen, you can take a look at and wordsmith.
You can, I just wanna make sure we can talk about everything. If we're gonna talk about one part, let's talk about it all.
well, sometimes, it all depends, sometimes to go to town meeting and have huge
Yeah.
revisions
That's
can be a little
fun.
more difficult for
I say
everybody
this-
to digest than if you just
That's
do
what
it little
amendments are.
pieces at a time. Just a thought,
I bring this up because on the news last week or the week before, Brookline was having, I think, a special town meeting to address an issue with their retail shop up there, that it had so much traffic and it's caused so many problems, they were bringing it to town meeting to make it appointment only. So we might want to reach out to Wareham and see how much traffic they have, since these projects are coming to us. It was that specific thing, would we want to look at making an appointment only, and would this be a good time to consider it? So,
Something that needs to be discussed.
that was just,
All right, next. Any more planning director notes?
Nope, that was it.
All right. Minutes of October 22nd, November 5th. We'll take October 22nd first.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Staying, I wasn't here.
Okay, so Jim is going to abstain. Okay, November 5th.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, none. Next meeting will be December 10th.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion and second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.